Yeah, I don't.
The meeting's called to order. Let's all stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wait, could you read the statement of the certification of the meeting?
The meeting has been advertised according to sunshine law.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Nero.
Here.
Mr. Melham. Mr. Zangari.
Here.
Mr. Conti.
Here.
Mr. Vanda.
Here.
Mr. Bowl.
Here.
Mr. Corbo.
Here.
Mr. Graziano.
Here.
Ms. Guaman.
Here.
Ms. Rico.
Here.
Ms. Novarado.
Here.
Mr. Sanabria. Mr. Di Lorenzo.
Here.
Mr. Hurd.
Here.
Ms. DeVito.
Here.
Can I have a motion for the approval of the minutes for the May 9, 2019 meeting?
So moved.
Someone second? Please call the roll.
Mr. Nero.
Yes.
Mr. Zangari.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Vanda.
Abstain.
Mr. Bowl.
Yes.
Mr. Corbo.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Abstain.
Ms. Guaman.
Yes.
Ms. Novarado.
Abstain.
And Ms. Rico.
Yes.
Resolutions to be memorialized. We have PB 2807, 2018-07, JCR Benelli 630-666, Washington Avenue, Block 9101, Lots 9 and 10, which is...
Rose Tobito, I just want to place on the record that we can memorialize it, but I will be editing it because there is one issue that wasn't included in Mr. Harrod's report, which I'll have Mr. Harrod state on the record. That one is for, yeah, that's for Washington.
Okay.
Washington Avenue.
All right.
Yeah, the one thing the board wanted was to make sure that all the fire department apparatus would be able to circulate the site, so the developer owes us a plan that shows that. I don't think there's a problem with any of their engines or the ambulances. The ladder truck might be a problem, so they have to show it, submit a plan, and that was one of the conditions that the board brought up. So we just want to add that to the resolution.
Okay. Can we call the roll?
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Zangari.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Vanda.
Yes.
Mr. Bowl.
Yes.
Mr. Corvo.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Guaman.
Yes.
Ms. Novarado.
Abstain.
And Ms. Rico.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Rose Tobito for PB 2905, 2019-05, 11 Franklin Avenue, Block 2301, Lots 1, 1.01, 1.02, and 1.03. Resolution will be presented at the next July meeting, July 11th, and memorialized at that time.
Adjournments, we have 705-757 Main Street, Block 10001, Lot 3, Belleville Industrial Center. The opposing attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Angelo Cifelli Jr., firm of Pyro Zinnis, Cifelli, Paris, and Jetta Tempo, representing the applicant. Here tonight to ask for an adjournment because, as the board knows, there's a plan coming in for rehabilitation of that property, and we think that may offer us an opportunity to even better our application, especially from an area of green space. So with that in mind, I'd like to ask for an adjournment while the rehabilitation process goes forward.
Thank you.
Granted.
That would be 675, not 75.
Right. That's right.
Okay, so that adjournment is granted and no further notice will be necessary. We'll carry it to the next meeting of July 11th, 2019.
I just would mention, but that I doubt the process will be completed then, but I could come
Right.
back at that time.
Well, just for the record, if anybody's in the audience for that particular application.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. We have another adjournment, PB 2019-04, 30 Washington Avenue, GR Masonry Works LLC, blocks 8502, lots 3, 4, 4.01, and 4.02. will be adjourned to our next regular meeting. No further announcements?
No further notice will be necessary, and anyone in the audience that may be here for that application can come back on July 11th.
There's also one more adjournment, PB 2808, 2018-08, 675 Main Street, Bridge Development, Route 21 Associates of Belleville LLC. That also will be adjourned to our next meeting with no further announcement.
No further notices are necessary. Anybody in the audience that's here for that application can come back on July 11th.
Correspondence. The planning board must review and make a determination on the record as to whether or not to recommend that the Township Council adopt resolution number 19-178 entitled Resolution of the Township Clerk to refer and submit a form of resolution to the Township Planning Board in accordance with the provisions of the local redevelopment and housing laws regarding whether or not the property 675 Main Street, Block 9103, Lot 1, and Block 10002, Lot 1, should be declared an area in need of rehabilitation.
Mr. Chairman, an important point of order on this, please. You've got a little legal problem here. Tuesday night, this request was Resolution 13 on the agenda. I asked the council respectfully to table it because this was in the folder. Now, what it says in there is that on June 11th, which was Tuesday night, the town meeting, the Township Council referred this to the planning board to see if it's an area in need of reinvestigation. It then goes on to say, on the same night, this was 2 days ago, whereas the planning board reviewed this proposed resolution at its meeting held on June 13th. Then goes on to say that Tom Harris gave his testimony. Now, how did they know Tuesday night what his testimony? And then it goes on another whereas, based on its review, the planning board recommended that the property be deemed and declared an area in need of rehabilitation as confirmed in the letter from the planning board attorney to the council of the township on June 13th planning board meeting. How did they know 48 hours? Were you folks told how to vote?
We told how to vote about it.
Huh?
Absolutely not.
Well, then how does the council, and this is for the record.
I don't even, just for the record, I haven't seen it,
All right.
I haven't read it, I was not
Well,
at that meeting.
something's wrong here,
so-
and we have a councilman here who heard me respectfully ask them to table it because of this problem. This is now in writing, that they knew 2 days before you even reviewed it, that the township engineer and the planning board approved it. This is Tuesday night.
Thank you, Mr. Brandon. For the record, I'm Dean Donatelli, Special Redevelopment Council for the Township. Mr. Brandon told me I'll speak to the board. So the local redevelopment and housing law provides that the council is supposed to refer a form of resolution to the planning board for review by the planning board and comment on that form of resolution, as well as hear testimony from any of the board's experts, any other input the board wants to consider, planning board wants to consider in reviewing that form of resolution. What Mr. Frantantoni is referring to is the form of resolution which was referred to the planning board for review. Now the statute provides that this board could say, after hearing Mr. Harris's testimony, that they want the resolution changed. Everything Mr. Frantantoni said is correct. It's what the law provides for. If the board has any comments, this board has any changes to that ordinance that was referred, you can make those changes now. If Tom's testimony is different than what the resolution says, it can be adjusted, but it's only a form of resolution that's what the statute provides. Mr. Frantantoni.
Well, I'm saying, this is a legal document. This says on June 11th that they already knew what the planning
You're
board
correct.
voted on.
Everything you're saying is correct. That's what the
Well,
law.
this is wrong.
It's not wrong. If this board wants to, it's a form. If this board wants to change it, or if the proceedings are different than what that resolution says, it will be adjusted as adopted by the governing body. Or this board could say that they don't recommend it. They can make any comments they want under the statute.
Okay, I disagree.
Thank you
But
very much.
Mr. Chairman, is there going to be a public hearing on this tonight?
It's not.
Is the public going to be allowed to speak on this?
That's up to the chairman, whether he wants to hear public testimony, but it's not a public hearing.
Because there's another important thing. You've got an application on the agenda tonight for the same property. The guy wants to build a beautiful warehouse there. 162 parking spaces, hundreds of jobs. So it's not an area in need of redevelopment. It's not an area in need of redevelopment. The owner is developing it. So it's a moot point tonight. I don't know why you're even hearing this, which I asked the council. But be aware, there could be some problem here. If somebody looks at this and say, how 2 days before the meeting, the town council knew how the planning board was going to vote.
Well, being we're not attorneys, Mr. Frantantoni, we'll have to take the advice of the town attorney, and his expert testimony is that it is legal, and, you know, we'll take his advice.
Well, I don't know if he's are you an attorney?
Yes. Would you like me to read, Mr. Chairman, if you prefer?
I know the statutes, I've been doing this for 50 years. I know what it says. I'm telling you what the council did the other night. They took an action in writing saying they knew what the recommendation of the planning board, 2 days before the meeting.
We won't argue.
I don't want to hear the statute, I know it. I know what it says. I know in the redevelopment, was only 5 criteria of redevelopment, now there's 8. I've been doing this since 1981. But this is wrong, it's not the issue of the redevelopment law, I know that fully. I forget your name, the first name, right?
Yes.
This is what I'm talking about. How does the council know in advance, and especially when I respectfully asked them to table it because there was some problems with it.
I'm assuming that, for the record, you're holding the resolution. Is that the recommended resolution in
I
your
also have the
hands?
agenda and the resolution that they passed.
We're going to have Mr. Harrods put testimony on the record. We're going to move forward. And if the chairman wants to, as a courtesy, let you speak, he can let you speak, and you can voice your opinion at that time.
Okay, fair enough?
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Good evening, everyone. Rose, you want to swear me in?
Sure. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Are you a certified professional engineer?
I'm a supported planner, engineer, and surveyor from the state of New Jersey
How long have you?
since 1977.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good. I prepared a report at the direction of the Special Redevelopment Council regarding 675 and 690 Main Street, which is commonly known as the Finkelstein property or the old Kidde property. This report is to certify that those 2 lots, the properties in question, are in an area in need of rehabilitation. Okay, so I'll read the report into the record. Dear Chairman Venero and board members, the purpose of this letter report is to determine whether Block 9103 Lot 1 and Block 10,002 Lot 1, the study area, located between Conrail right-of-way and the Main Street Route 21 corridor, qualifies as an area in need of rehabilitation as defined in the local redevelopment and housing law, NJSA 40A:12-1 et sec., the redevelopment law. Section 14 of the redevelopment law specifies the conditions that must be met within the delineated area and the process to be undertaken by the Township Council and Planning Board during the investigation process. The study area is approximately 24.02 acres area located between the Conrail right-of-way and Route 21, just north of Roosevelt Street, or Roosevelt Avenue. To the north is a PSE&G power substation. East of the study area is Route 21 and the Passaic River. South of the study area is a mixture of residential and industrial uses along Roosevelt Avenue. Industrial uses, contractor storage yards, automotive repair, 2-family homes, multi-family buildings, and 3-family homes are located along the north side of Roosevelt Avenue, which abuts the study area. Block 9103, Lot 1 is presently vacant and has been for many years. The property was formerly the site of the Walter Kidde factory. Encompassing approximately 24 acres, this lot is the larger of 2 properties within the study area. The main access point for this lot is from driveways on Main Street, but there is secondary and active access from Kidde Place, which is located off Roosevelt Avenue. Block 10,002, Lot 1 is between Main Street and Route 21. This approximately 25 by 50 foot lot contains a small, approximately 615 foot vacant deteriorating building previously used as a pump house for the industrial uses on Block 9103, Lot 1. Based on the above conditions and prior use of the study area, and as per resolution number 19178 adopted by the Township Council on June 11th, in accordance with NJSA 40A:12A-14, we certify that the above referenced properties meet the following conditions in support of declaring them in need of rehabilitation. Just as an aside, the law has 6 conditions to declare an area in need of rehabilitation. You have to satisfy one. This satisfies 3 of them. So satisfies number 3, there's a pattern of vacancy, abandonment, and underutilization of the said properties. 5, environmental contamination is discouraging improvements and investment in the said properties. And 6, the majority of the water and sewer infrastructure serving the properties is at least 50 years old and in need of repair and substantial maintenance. If you have any questions or require additional information, do not hesitate to contact me.
Thank you. Before we open it to the public, what is it that we need to do with the study?
I think Dean might be able to, I think you need to make a recommendation to the mayor and council.
After hearing Mr. Harris's testimony, the role of the board is to make any comments to the form of resolution that was forwarded to the planning board. If there are no comments or modifications, you would refer this back to the town council, making a recommendation that the property be declared an area in need of rehabilitation. And you'd also authorize the board attorney to make that communication to the town council.
Okay.
Mr. Donatelli, to clarify even in my own mind, what Mr. Frantantoni brought up is what the council did, a way of trying to give us a lead or leadership to what we should do tonight. Why have they, created a document
Right.
like that?
So there's under the local redevelopment and housing law, there are 2 different types of declarations that could be made by a municipality. One is an area in need of redevelopment, and the other one is an area in need of rehabilitation. The procedures are a little more stringent when it comes to an area in need of redevelopment versus what you're considering tonight, which is an area in need of rehabilitation. The statute provides where the town council determines that a program of rehabilitation is necessary for a particular property. It lays out a procedure, and that procedure is town council is to prepare, have its attorney prepare a form of resolution to be forwarded to the planning board for consideration. It's true that the town council is recommending that this board make that determination because they feel a program of rehabilitation is necessary.
Is that what that resolution is, a recommendation?
It's a form of resolution. This board can make modifications to it. It essentially, the town council anticipated Mr. Harris's testimony. He's aware of the property, and now the council needs your guidance as to whether you agree with that testimony, the form of resolution. And you're free to modify it, you're free to reject it, there's flexibility here.
What is the major difference between area in need of redevelopment and rehabilitation?
Well, the procedure in declaring one is a little different. If you recall, the redevelopment area requires a public notice, different type of notice, a public hearing on this process, the light investigation process. There's typically a more strenuous analysis of the property, whereas an area in need of rehabilitation is, as Mr. Harris testified, the property has the infrastructure, water and sewers greater than 50 years of age. If there's a pattern of vacancy, so it's, and then there are other benefits. Obviously, there's no condemnation or the ability to condemn under the area in need of rehabilitation. So that's one big difference. And another unique piece about the area in need of rehabilitation is that it can be a town-wide area in need of rehabilitation. If the governing body determined that any of those criteria Mr. Harris mentioned are satisfied throughout the entire town, you could make like Jersey City and Newark, those cities are areas in need of rehabilitation townwide.
And what advantages are there to developing under that criteria?
Well, one is, the biggest advantage is that the governing body now can create a redevelopment plan of rehabilitation that can dictate the type of building they want, the density, the height. That's the major tool that you would get from both the redevelopment area and the rehabilitation area. So in that respect, they're very similar. So if there is a declaration of an area of rehabilitation, a redevelopment plan would be prepared. It would start with the council, as it does. It would come back here for consistency review, and then go back to the council. That essentially would become the zoning ordinance. One other piece with the area of rehabilitation is a tax abatement is available, but in an area of rehabilitation, it's only a 5-year. It's the short-term tax abatement law, which has a term of 5 years, whereas the
I
other.
think I prefer that to the area in need of redevelopment.
It's a great tool.
Because I say it, and I'll say it publicly, I'm not sure that our town has always negotiated for the people maybe as well as they could. And we never really seem to hear what the final deal was with the developer. You know, we grant them that, and I understand why, but the devil's in the details sometimes. So if it's a limited time of abatement, I think that would be better for the
You
town.
could, if there were, I don't know what the, again, this is just a blank stage, so we don't know what this will lead to for this particular property, and you guys know the Walter Kidde site better than I do. You know, it's been vacant for a very long time, nothing's happened there. I don't know if there's an anticipation of an abatement here, but it would only be 5 years under this statute. It couldn't be in the third year under the redevelopment statute.
And even during the 5 years, if there's a tax abatement, the town will still get taxes out of it.
Yes, correct. And that is not this.
Yeah, just want to be clear,
Yes,
because when people hear tax abatement, they think, oh, the town's not getting anything.
correct.
But even if it was granted, and it was only for 5 years, the town would get, I guess the portion would be
It's
negotiated?
95, so whatever the tax rate is, the pilot rate, it's usually based on annual gross revenue. Whatever the percentage is that's negotiated, 95% of that goes to the municipality, and 5% of that goes to the county. And as you know, with normal taxation, I don't know what your exact percentages are in Belleville, but usually it's 40% to the town, another 30 or 40% to the school district, and another remaining percentage to the county. Where under the pilot, which again is not the subject of this particular proceeding, it would be 95 to the municipality and 5% to the county.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So anybody else on the board have a question of Mr. Harret's report? That he stated we need one condition to meet an area of rehabilitation. He stated that there's 3 that he clearly feels apply to this property that has been abandoned or underutilized for a number of years, that the majority of the sewer and infrastructure is probably well over 50 years old, and being a property was built and operational during World War II, and that there is environmental contamination. So if no board members have questions, we'll open it up briefly to the public for comments. Mr. Frantantoni?
Yes, in regards to Mr. Harris' comment, first of all, through the chair, Mr. Conte, these developers' agreements are public information. I get them, all you gotta do is open them. I mean, I have the 33-1 to Belmont Avenue, and I know all the details of them.
Well,
So
listen,
you're on the planning board, they're not secret.
Well, I applaud you all the time, but personally, I don't have the time to do that. I'm working 70 hours a week.
Well,
I'm
then
happy
you should
to
be serving.
Well, listen,
Then you should
I'm
be
happy to
serving on the
serve, but
board.
I don't have the time possibly that you have,
Right,
so.
but it's public information, you
I'm
can
sure
get
it
it
is.
like I got it.
But his point, Mr. Frantantoni, is if we approve something, we don't know the details till after it's a done deal. So if we approve something, I mean, it's already a done deal. Like he said, the devil is in the details, and that's after we pass something, so that
Well,
was his point.
maybe you should ask that after these things are passed, when it's done, the developer's agreement, the financial agreement should be forwarded to you guys so you can learn for the next time something comes up. You know whether it was good or bad what you passed, had good effect or
But
bad
Mr.
effect.
Kid, that's not our role.
Huh?
That's not our role. It's not the
Well-
planning board's role to approve or disapprove of what the council decides to do on a pilot program. I'm
No,
interested as a
but it's
citizen,
your
but
role
it's
to
not...
know the effect of it. And I know years ago, we had planning board members who would really look out for the township. And they questioned in detail what was going on and what happened after it. I mean, the planning board brought them all on the Franklin Avenue back before them 3 times because they weren't compliant. We had a board that was going after them. They passed a resolution, they gave them, they approved their application, but then the planning board watched it. As they were driving around town, members would say, hey, you didn't comply with that thing. So that's your job, to make sure that what you pass is done right.
Mr. Frantantoni, can you please just
Yes,
leave
Mr.
the
Harris,
discussion to
Mr. Harris
this
gave,
application in front of us?
Mr. Harris gave the 3 criteria for it all. Vacancy, abandonment, contamination, and the utilities and the sewer and water lines are 50 years old. In front of my house, they're from 1927, they're almost 100 years old. So I don't think that applies here. In the scope of Belleville, 50 years is a relatively new system. In regards to vacancy and abandonment, and again, if you planning board members aren't paying attention, this property was sold to Walmart for $21 million. Home Depot come in and sign the contract. Lowe's come in, actually came before the planning board, all right, to put something there. So it wasn't abandoned. The reason it was vacant is because of the second criteria, the contamination. But the Finkelsteins were clearing up the property. They were working with the DEP, who, you know, I don't know if you do a lot of holing, Mr. Venero. You see sometimes a guy excavates the dirt, and then you have to call the DEP to inspect it. 9 months, a year and a half sometimes, and on your area.
Well, this is 25 years this property's abandoned. 25
But
years.
it wasn't abandoned, they were
What,
working,
you
they
don't
were
consider it
cleaning it up.
abandoned? 26 acres vacant with no building on it? That's not
Because it
abandoned?
was in the process of
Not for 25
cleaning
years.
up the contamination.
Not for 25
Well,
years.
it wasn't 25 years. First of all, I went in that big building that was there, that was less than 20, that was torn down, that building. In fact, they did some movie company did a movie in that old, the main office building. I don't even know if Tom Harris was the town attorney at that time, all right? So
I wish I was the town.
But the thing is now, you have an application before you. I don't know if any of you seen the plans. I saw the plans, I went through every page of it. It's a good project for the town. A lot of parking, a lot of jobs created, no kids in the school system, ratables, you all right? Clean, nice ratables. So at this point, at least, you would table it until after you saw what the application was all about. And, you know,
The applicant's attorney?
Mr. President, if I may, I represent the applicant.
the Walter Kidde site or the
Walter Kidde
industrial
site.
complex?
Bridge Development, the Walter Kidde site, the one you're talking about, the warehouse.
All right, well, see, there's some confusion back here with that.
And I just want you to know that we intend to go forward with our application, even if when they make it a area of
And I'm
need of
glad,
rehabilitation, we will still be there. That's why I only adjourned the application tonight. So we have no intention of not going forward. I just want you to
I have
know
no
that.
problem with you, I love the application.
It's
I mean,
gonna
we've
be
been
even
waiting
better.
for it.
That's all I can tell you. I think we can make it better.
Yes, I know that, and that's why I'm addressing the board. I'm addressing the board on your behalf.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I have no problem with you. You see the way they do things here, so we want your application to go through. So I don't want the planning board to gum everything up. So these criteria, there's reasons for these criteria. It wasn't abandoned, they were working down there all the time. There's still, there's monitoring wells there.
I
There's still
disagree
other
with you, Mr.
DEP
Frantantoni.
ready.
I disagree.
Well, you're disagreeing with facts, not my opinion.
Your facts. Your facts. You always present your facts.
Are you saying the DEP, they weren't cleaning up the property with the DEP oversight?
I don't think that was tying the property up for the last 25 years, no.
Enough, do you recall when they sold it to Walmart?
I don't think it was ever sold. It was in the
It
process.
was
I don't think it was ever
a $21
sold.
million sale, but it was
Sale?
a
I don't
contingent
remember
sale
being a sale.
because it wasn't cleaned up in time. all right? Are you aware that Lowe's appeared before the
Yeah,
planning
I
board?
know all the history, I know the history, that's why I want to move this application forward, because it's the biggest piece of property in the town, and it's sitting idle, so we want to get it done.
Good, I like
And you're
what you
objecting
just
to
said.
that.
I
You're
like
objecting
what
to
you
that.
just said. You
You're
want to
objecting
move
to
the
it.
application forward, not a declaration of rehabilitation. The
Well,
application,
maybe
I
the
agree
application
with.
needs that to get the deal done, Mr. Frantantoni.
How does that need it?
Okay, I'm gonna stop all that. You're not even supposed to be making comments, I'll be perfectly honest with you, from a legal standpoint, but we're giving you, Mr. Veneer is giving you the courtesy. So I don't want any arguments. If you want to finish up your comments and let somebody else speak, I see someone's hand behind you that would like to speak. So if you
Well,
want to finish
the reason I'm
up,
bringing that, and I brought up what happened Tuesday night at the meeting, I know how Mr. Graziano, him and his board, the other 5 board members, I don't know how they knew in advance how this board was gonna run, and it's in writing,
We already went.
what's in writing, what they voted on.
okay, we understand your concern, and it is on the record. Thank you.
Mr. Del Gershio.
Yes, Jerry DeGuercio, 8 Grove Street. I want to clear something up, and since we have 2 attorneys that are land use attorneys, and Mr. Frantantoni might not be aware of this, I want to clear this up. No matter which way you vote tonight, you can vote yes, you can vote no, it's only a recommendation to the council. The council makes their own decision.
Yes.
You can vote no, and they can turn around and vote yes. And that's the way it's set up. Second thing, the gentleman here has an application filed. He's protected, no matter what is done here tonight. If it's something that helps the application, he can use it. If it's something that hurts the application, it can't be used. Because he's protected, because he already filed the application in. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anybody else want to argue with me on this? Thank you. That's the thing. That doesn't mean this application is going to go out the window because they make a decision tonight on an area in need of rehabilitation. And I agree. 5 years is better than 30. No argument there. And I hope that clears this up once and for all. This application is not dead by any means.
Thank you.
you.
Anybody else for the public? If not, we'll close. Oh, Brian, did you have a comment?
The applicant is okay with this.
We actually think that were you to go forward, that our application will be improved from the township's point of view. But we will be going forward. I can promise you that.
At this point, we'll close the public portion of this. Patty, we'll close the public portion. And if nobody on the board has any further questions or comments, would someone like to make a recommendation to pass this, an area in need of rehabilitation, and forward it to the council?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Venera.
Yes.
Mr. Zangari.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Vanda.
Yes.
Mr. Gold. Mr. Corvo.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Wallen.
Yes.
And Mr. Alvarado.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have Chapter 23 Ordinance Amendments. Marion Bucci Carter, planner with CME Associates, will provide an overview of the proposed revisions and amendments made to implement the master plan re-examination recommendations.
So this is,
There you go.
is that any way? Oh, that's good, I'm fine. Okay, I'm gonna try and talk loud. Okay. I'm gonna try and talk loud. Really loud. So I have, to start off, I have some housekeeping items. And this is a zoning map, from zoning maps with amendments. There's a small copy of it in everyone's packet in color. And this map is for anyone in the audience reference. I'll try and turn it so that you can see it a little better. So, the last time I was here, we presented a master plan reexamination. And a lot of the recommendations in that re-exam were very forward-thinking. They're out-of-the-box ideas, new goals and objectives that were well-received and seem to implement a lot of things that Belleville has been wanting to do for a long time. The next logical step in implementing those ideas is to start amending the zoning ordinance to address those. Now, every single one of them cannot be done at once, but there is a logical way to approach it. And we work very closely with the subcommittee and your professionals to come to I guess, gather enough ideas and changes that will make a difference for a zoning ordinance amendment to achieve some of the changes that you're looking for. Basically, the most important thing is to better Belleville, increase jobs, improve real estate value, encourage real estate investment, improve neighborhoods, increase open space. All of the things that are starting to happen in a lot of urban areas around the state, but they need adjustments in legislation to encourage that. So what we did is we basically started looking at the ordinance itself. Even though it was last dated 2007, there are many regulations within it that are much older than that. And a lot of them were outdated and needed new definitions and some new uses that didn't even exist back then. So the first thing that was done was an overview of the definition section, modernizing that. I'll just go through just an overview, and then we can go through specific questions if you have in there. Because one of the things that you'll see in this document, the document is not an overview, the document is very specific. It identifies the exact ordinance sections and crosses out anything that would be deleted and adds in bold and italics anything that would be added. So it's very specific on what the changes are. And if you have any questions on those, I can answer them. But I'm going to, since there's a lot, I'm going to try and give a little bit of an overview. So the biggest, probably most significant item that was in the master plan reexamination was recognizing that the light rail station was a very big, it's a very big plus for Belleville. And it needs to be looked at so that the area around it can be advanced by the advent of that station. And so it's a Silver Lake station, and with the subcommittee, it became very obvious that the Silver Lake district is significant, and it means a lot, and it's something special that's in Belleville, it's nowhere else. And that should be preserved and encouraged and advanced. So even though in the past, there was always zoning that was like forced upon an area that maybe didn't match the historic patterns of development. So we decided to try and change that. Encourage the type of development that you have there and maintain those neighborhoods instead of trying to break them. Encourage them to grow the way they originally were. So there's a Silver Lake district established that has special design regulations and standards. That's different than the other residential districts of Belleville, because those other residential districts are very different. There's standards also provided for the types of homes that could be developed there based on the current architecture that's there. And it identifies building types and design considerations so that if someone comes in for a new home within that district, it's not going to be, and I'm going to use a term that gets thrown around a lot, a Bayonne box. It'll be a home that is either fits one of the characteristics of a contemporary home, or a craftsman home, or a colonial or Italianate. It has certain characteristics. And you have, since it's in your ordinance now, you'll have the ability to look for those components. And Silver Lake can, when applications come before you, or even if they go for zoning for a permit, they'll have certain components with them. The other thing that was looked at was looking at the industrial districts, and that's in here. The industrial districts are purple on the map. Instead of the traditional old industrial districts with truck terminals, warehouses, the idea was to separate those two I1s, I2s into a research and development zone that encourages also office buildings and office uses, modern office uses like shared lived workspace, things that are happening in those kind of fringe areas, so it's not heavy industrial. And then keep more of the traditional industrial uses in the area a little more along Main Street, so that there's the area that's right closest to Washington Avenue. It's more of a transition and it has the potential to attract offices and businesses with jobs that could patronize, Main Street and the shops along Main Street. So the other thing that was done as well was take the EG zone that was shown to be successful and make some adjustments to make sure that it continues to be successful, identify it in a few more places, and take that same concept and that idea and apply it to the smaller neighborhood business districts, so that those neighborhood business districts could be just like they were in the past, where you'd have maybe a ground floor store, whether, at the time it used to be candy store, but you'd have a store and you'd have people living upstairs. That shouldn't be prohibited. Why would it? A lot of the neighborhoods in the residential districts in Belleville need those places that you could walk to, so hopefully you could walk down the street and get to a store, get to a shop. So in those business districts, it was simplified, and that was made into a BA zone that allows 2 stories above a retail base. I mean, it's 3. But what the bottom line is that the zoning regulations are designed to create the neighborhoods that everyone likes and build what you want to see, instead of trying to fit these rigid regulations that are typical across the state into an area that's not like that. And in fact, the biggest asset of Belleville is that it has this historic neighborhood feel, and we want to kind of encourage that and allow it to be permitted. So other things that were done are updating some parking standards, making them easier to follow, requiring some modern inclusions such as a jitney for projects over certain sizes, charging stations, and car sharing as well. Those are things that are common now in lots of other places, and they're not as unusual as you may think. So those are the kind of things that are in this new ordinance. I'll flip through some examples. In addition to that, there's a lot of little adjustments, little cleanup adjustments. Say one of the amendments prohibits driveways from coming off the street and going down. It encourages flooding. It's actually not a good practice, so it's now taken out as part of the zoning, rather than dealing with the issues by a construction official. There's a few other things here. There's a lot of other things. The definitions, some of the newer definitions are for art studios, restaurants, actually, it was updated as well, maker spaces, office flex spaces, and also addressing some of the conditional use standards and modernizing that as well. There's a lot of uses that were listed within those standards, amusement devices, things that really don't apply anymore. So that was looked at and updated into being indoor-outdoor recreation with regulations for that. Swimming pools and also other play equipment was addressed as well, since there were no regulations for that. A whole new sign ordinance modeled after some of Nutley's ideas and some of Montclair's ideas, and it really, is natural that it should apply to a place like Washington Avenue. So now it's a little more comprehensive and very specific and easy to follow. We established a parking fund so that now Belleville can start moving forward with the idea of having a parking garage to serve businesses and merchants along Washington. And it's open to possibly, for Silver Lake, and it's open to possible expansion to the Washington Avenue shopping district as well. Let's see. There's a lot in here, but the biggest, like I said, what I also passed out for the board's edification is, Frank pointed out that there was a discrepancy in the fees for a zoning violation. And so what was just passed out for you is an amendment to the current ordinances that would eliminate that discrepancy. And I also have one other thing that I would like to point out and make a change. One of our subcommittee members was very specific and did not want to see a tinted concrete sidewalk. And I think it shows up in one of the standards, and it was meant to be deleted everywhere, and I missed it. So in 23-18.27, under general building requirements, item 10, we would just want to delete the sentence that says sidewalk concrete shall be tinted Schofield charcoal or equivalent.
Can you repeat the section?
23-18.27. Yeah. So, there's a lot in here. There's allowances for summer kitchens. There's some allowances for increased parking for the R1 and the R2 zones, so that there can be driveways along the side property line, because apparently that has been an issue. And it's been something that should be accommodated, but there was a setback issue with that, so that's been eliminated, so that if that's a demand and that's in demand and that's what people in that neighborhood needs, then the zoning should reflect that need. And so those are the kind of things that were done. There's a little more creative things as well, where carriage houses in certain instances would be permitted. But that's also, they'd have to meet the parking standards and other characteristics. So, if you have any questions, we can go through that, because there's a lot here, but I don't think it wouldn't benefit us to go through every single item.
I definitely have some questions.
Okay.
I read somewhere in the Silver Lake District that any lot that's existing today is now conforming.
That was that's already in the ordinance.
Because right now you can't build on a 25-foot lot, and on here it even says you want to build on a 20-foot lot.
Yeah, you can.
If an existing structure was there.
Yeah, you can. Now, the lot sizes were changed to reflect, that's the character of the neighborhood. There are many blocks of homes where they...
I lived in Silver Lake my whole life. I understand the houses are on top of each other.
Yeah.
But if you have 25 feet of open space, and now you want to cram, here it says townhouse. You can put a 3-family townhouse on a 25-foot lot, and then require no parking. Did I read that
35
correct?
foot would have to have parking. Less than 20 feet would be no parking.
What if we did that in a way that if it was already that way for the no parking? And I think there should be some form of parking
Okay.
associated with it. It was
Yeah, I think
already,
there
if it was
is.
a lot that was stuck with that somebody existing house,
Yeah.
they can get away with it because they were there already that way
Yeah,
anyway.
only the
It's
existing ones.
causing
The
a
new
hardship,
ones would, the new ones would need to provide parking.
I thought I read somewhere that you could have a 3-family on a 25-foot lot and require no parking.
No, I don't think so.
No?
No.
I think you
The only exemption for parking is if the lot is less than 20 feet wide and it's pre-existing, that's, so that a lot of...
So if it's a
homes-
20-foot lot, you could put a three-family townhouse and not have any parking.
That's if it's pre-existing.
So let me ask you a question.
So if there's already house there, say it burns down, they can rebuild their house.
Well, it doesn't say that, though. It doesn't say that.
Is it
No,
missing?
a 20 foot would be new, I think. I think a 20 would be new, would be okay. But you still have to meet all the other standards.
No
And-
on-street parking shall be required for development of a one, two, or three-family dwelling on any lot which is 20 feet in width or less.
Yes.
Or less.
So it means you got a lot that's 20 feet, you got a three-family townhouse, and there's no parking required.
Only for, yeah, in those instances, but other requirements still have to be met too. I mean, if there's a variance, if there's a setback variance, if there's some other
I don't care
component.
what kind of variance, how could you allow a three-family with no parking?
Well, the idea is for Silver Lake, and this is a philosophy that has been applied in lots of different places, and if it doesn't work here, you actually could change it, but the recommendation is that the benefit of the train station is huge, and then the
The
advent...
train station, in your report, it says, it's relatively new, it's there 17 years. It's 17 years, that's not relatively new, but I don't think, because there was even a report that said, like, people in Silver Lake don't have cars. We have less cars than most people in Belleville, because, I don't know why, maybe because of the train station. I don't know one person in Silver Lake that doesn't have a car because of the lake.
Yeah, well, it's not that, and it's not that things are gonna change overnight. A lot of it is about is keeping the character of Silver Lake intact. And if the car is the primary concern, then everything will be about parking. And in Silver Lake, it's the place that Belleville has that has a different character. And the car is the primary concern in a lot of the bigger, the R1 district, the R2 district, and the multifamily districts. In Silver Lake has the potential and has the character of a traditional neighborhood where the car is not the primary factor. And in fact, that's why the parking fund is started, so that there's in certain instances, there can be a fund collected to start basically to finance either a parking lot or a parking garage that would serve the
Well,
needs for
that's a
demand.
good idea.
So that's the whole idea.
That's
So,
a good idea.
so maintaining the character of the neighborhood and putting in place a way to raise money to do for parking garages to serve so that the neighborhood isn't dominated by parking on the residential streets. And
Well,
that's the whole idea.
I'll just give you an example. I live on Frederick Street. So when I come home from work, I got people from the hospital who don't want to pay, the workers who don't want to pay to park on my street. I got people that ride the light rail and can't find parking on my street. And I got the teachers from number 4 school who don't have parking on my street.
Well, one of the things, and I'll raise this now because I really feel that this is very important. One of the other things that was a recommendation in the master plan reevaluation is to quickly, especially when there's people interested in developing your community, reevaluate your parking standards, your on-street parking standards. Because that's the problem. It's not so much the problem that there's no required parking for every house. The problem is that people from the hospital would be permitted to park in a residential neighborhood. There should be resident permit only on-street parking. And so those are the kind of things that need to be evaluated. It's not the parking requirement that's the problem, we also need a component, a complementary component that addresses the on-street parking.
Is that something the
And
council looks at?
That's something the council would have to do.
Is that something that can be?
Yeah, because that's the next step, and that's the way to make sure that new development doesn't hinder the on-street situation.
There's already an ordinance for the permit parking.
Yeah, on Nickel Street.
We talked at the last meeting.
There's one street, I think, that.
Yeah, but
Can we
we
take
talked about it last meeting, we can
Can we
bring that
take a
up.
broader look at it? You think is that?
Because that's the,
That's about
honestly,
right.
that's the issue, and that will preserve neighborhood and character, and at the same time, make sure that the regulations for on-street parking that are needed are in place.
I like that.
Question, will the changing of the lot sizes, allowing smaller lot sizes, will it encourage people to start subdividing lots in Silver Lake. They have a side yard, they have 20 feet, they have 25 feet, they make a subdivision, they start putting up houses on side lots where maybe there is some parking right now. Because I also lived in that neighborhood for quite a while, so there are some smaller lots that through the years people just dedicated to parking. Will this
Things
encourage
change.
construction on all those smaller lots?
It'll hopefully encourage investment and kind of finish off the neighborhood and make the neighborhood a place where people want, more people want to be. It will change the dynamics, that's for sure, but that's why you would need at the same time a neighborhood parking zone or something like that, so that things, nobody else can be using that parking. But I think the whole idea is for that to happen. The idea is to fill in the gaps, to have people, want to fix up homes that are already there. And the lot sizes, would have to, if they go lower than a certain size, they'd have to come before, they needed subdivision anyway.
That's what we have now. I mean, if you want to build a 20, Frank, right now, isn't it only if it was a pre-existing house on a 25-foot lot, you can rebuild it?
Correct.
Right. So now we're going to grant you the permission to build on a 25-foot lot without even a variance. I think you should come before a board and let them look at it. Look at the situation. Maybe you say, oh yeah, that does fit. The house next to it has an oversized lot. But I don't think you should just grant anybody in Silver Lake 25-foot lot start putting up houses. I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, see, I understand what you're saying. One of the reasons for looking at it this way, and we could do that, we could put in a 25-foot minimum and make that the Silver Lake standard, but there should be a standard that's set in place so that every applicant doesn't have to come before the board. That's part of what makes places work well, and people feel more comfortable investing somewhere if they know what the process is, they know that if I do this, I can get my permit, and then they're willing to do that sometimes. They're willing, I have to do a nicer house, I have to follow those design standards, but this is what I need to do when I can get my permit. But if every single time they have to build something or to invest, they have to go to a board, it's expensive, and it stalls people, and it discourages them. So
I mean, we don't want to discourage building, but I feel if you're building on a 25-foot lot, you should come before a board and say, does this fit in the neighborhood?
Well,
You shouldn't just paint a broad stroke throughout the whole Silver Lake and say.
25, Silver Lake is typical. A lot of urban, and even in Hudson and Bergen County, a lot of the urban areas, the cores, do have 25-foot lots, even down in some of the shore communities. 25 feet is typical. Smaller than 25 gets more like the historic districts in Hoboken, and a little more dense.
I understand.
25 is...
I feel like you're trying to make Silver Lake like Hoboken or Jersey City, and we don't have the advantages that they have.
No, I'm
We don't
not.
have the multi-million-dollar parks, we don't have the Hudson waterfront, we don't have the one-seat train ride to New York City, we don't have that. So we're gonna get the congestion like these giant cities have without the advantages.
Well,
We got a light rail that's a 35-minute ride to North Penn Station. I mean, if you consider, yeah, it helps a little bit, but it's 30 to 35 minutes to get from Silver Lake to North Penn, and now you gotta get another train, a path.
25 feet is not unusual.
Yeah, but we haven't allowed that. We haven't allowed that.
But
and if
do
you wanted to do it-
But you do have a lot of, you look at the zoning map in Silver Lake.
I know, I lived there my whole life.
Yeah,
I
there's a
know.
lot of 20, that's why it was chosen. That's why that was an example.
That's why the fire department, when they hear of a fire in Silver Lake, the guys kind of freak out. Because the houses are built on top of each other, they're old construction, they're timber boxes, and now we're gonna seem like add to the problem.
But see, if there's a lot that's 25, most of them are 25. Right now, the current zoning ordinance says you can build on a 25-foot lot because that's what they are.
Frank,
So-
isn't it
so
only if there was
we're
a
not
house
doing
there?
anything
Yes.
different
It's only if the
as far
house
as
was
that
there
goes.
originally. You can't build on a 25-foot lot.
So what, do you want Silver Lake to look like Rutan Estates, or do you want it to look like Silver Lake?
I lived there. I don't know if you guys walked through there when you hand out pamphlets, but I lived there every day.
My mother used to
I don't
live there.
think, I don't
On
think
Echo,
cramming more houses in. If it's an odd condition, come before a board and say, hey, look, yeah, we agree with you. The lot next to you is big, the other side's big. We got how many apartment buildings we got in Silver Lake? And now you got a 25-foot house lot next to the apartment building, and you want to build a 3-story, 3-family townhouse on it. I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy. It's one thing to put a 1-family. Behind me, I'll give you for instance, the guy behind me had a nice big lot, 1-family house, I think 3 bedrooms. He came before the board, I had to recuse myself, but he wanted to put two families on I think it was about a 65 or 70-foot lot, two 3-bedroom apartments with a finished attic and a finished basement. You would have 32 people living in these 2 houses, 32 people. And right now, it's a nice house, he's got some grass, he's got a tree, it's a beautiful house. And then, with this ordinance, you don't even need a variance, just, okay, I'm gonna knock my house down and build 2 families with 3 bedrooms in them, I'll finish the basement, put a country kitchen, a summer kitchen in the basement, I'll rent that out, I'll finish the attic, I'll rent that out. That doesn't improve the neighborhood.
What do you want to see?
What's that?
What do you want to see?
I want to see what's there. And if there is a 25-foot lot, come before a board and say, do you think it fits? Don't just paint that broad stroke and say, any lot in Silver Lake you can build on. Especially a 20-foot lot, 3 families? I think that's insane.
But the bottom line for that, I mean, if that's how you feel, we could try and draw something up that implements that, but an ordinance does have to have, it should have a minimum size. It can't just be up to the board every time. You would have to pick a number.
Well,
So
it's
if
already
you-
established, the building lots in town, no?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
We have that.
so right now, I'd have to look and see which,
What do
whatever.
you want to know? I can tell you, I'm the chairman of the zoning board.
Okay, so right now, is it 35?
One family could be on a 40 by 100-foot lot. A 2-family could be, also there's 1 families in certain areas of the town that has to be on a 50 by 100-foot lot. 2-family could be on a 50 by 100-foot lot. And 3 families or more, I believe, have to be on a 100 by 100. Okay, now let me tell you something. What he said is right. And the case came before us. And it was a 25 by 100. They wanted to put a 2-family where it was previously a 1-family. I advised the gentleman that we had this ordinance. He did not have to come before us. He could build a 1-family without having to come before anybody. Now, the other thing I want to say about this from what I read, okay, in that ordinance, and you can ask Frankie, you still get 3 feet on each side of the building. You have to have a side yard of at least 3 feet on each side. Under this, there's certain places where you don't have to have any feet. It's a joke. No feet, or 3. Maximum 3, minimum none. That's what's in this that I read. Now you can go on. If you want to ask me any more questions, you can ask me any more questions.
The whole gist of the zoning is to try and keep the character of Silver Lake. And right now, it's basically getting eaten away because the zoning that's applied for it is the zoning that exists for the R1 and the R2 zone, not the character of Silver Lake. And yes, it would get more dense, but historically, it had buildings that had ground floor retail, it has buildings that
Yeah,
don't
that's a
have
good
any
idea.
parking.
Ground floor retail, up for that.
But the way, I mean, it's one thing to say you like that, and I can understand that you're hesitant when you see it in regulation form, because it's different than you've had before. It's very different than what you've had before. But what it does is it maintains the character of what's out there. If 25 is too much, you could look at doing 30, because then for 30, even though a lot of people have 25, then they'd have to go before a board if they want to go less, and that would get you what you wanted. It would get some oversight, and that might be one way to do it. And that way, you still are not requiring the same expanse or size that you are for the other residential districts. And you're making a special accommodation for Silver Lake to try and keep that character. So I think that might be a compromise, one way to do it. Because this might be too much of a big step all at once.
Yeah.
But realistically, it's 25 is typical of lots of communities. But if that's not what you're used to, then it might be, I mean, it's only an ordinance, and it can get changed if it doesn't work. So what this is basically a way to implement some of the things that people want to see, but you kind of have to give it a chance. You have to try it out and see what works and what doesn't work, and you can always change it at another meeting.
I think your suggestion was in spirit of cooperation.
Yeah, my only little fear about that, and it was even in the subcommittee meetings, is that, and I don't know how much is out there, but that you may get a rush of people looking to cash in on an opportunity to subdivide their lots and start putting up houses, which may not be the worst thing in the world, don't get me wrong, especially if you're taking down an older house, which needs to be replaced anyhow. I somewhat agree with Ray too, we have to watch some of the side yards and some of the setbacks. I certainly won't want to see houses built with little side yards. I mean, I think that's overbuilding, to say the least. I had a lot in Silver Lake that I don't know if I came before planning or zoning many years ago, and I was granted a variance, but, you know, it was under the conditions that made sense with parking, you know, garages, side yard was 10 feet, it was maybe 3 feet on the other side, we had the 20-foot setback in the back, so I built the house to accommodate the lot. I think if you start to remove the side yards and rear yards and front yards, you're gonna get some overbuilding, and people are just gonna come in, they're gonna cash in, they're not gonna live there, they're gonna sell it off to some unsuspecting person, and they're gone. I saw it in Newark, I came from Newark, and Newark had a lot of 25-foot lots, so you had to rebuild it in that manner. And some of it was good, but some of it was abusive too, to the neighborhoods. They just threw up a lot of houses, they cashed in on it, and the developers run off, and the town is left with a mess, so to speak,
Well,
sometimes.
a typical side yard combination on a 25-foot lot, which is all over, say, you know, Hudson County, like Weehawken, North Bergen, those communities, is 5 feet total, with 3 and 2. That's typical. Sometimes you can do 3 and 3.
We're gonna grant zero. We're gonna grant zero under this.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is if you want to see a little more, you know, something a little different here, that might be a solution. Looking at 35 with 5 and 2, that's one way to go. There's lots of different approaches, but I mean, that I think will at least give a guideline and let people know that there's a character to maintain, not requiring 50. 40 and 50 is just way too much for that
Yes, for
neighborhood.
that neighborhood, I agree.
You're just gonna end up with parking and driveways. It'll kill the character. As soon as people come in with new construction like that, that defines the character. And if you get new construction that's of the type that would have been like, you know, 50 or 60 years ago, where the houses were built with the porch and the stoop, and if you permit that, you're gonna get that. But now, if you go to a bigger lot that's a little more like the other residential districts, you're not gonna get that. So that's one thing to think about. But like I said, I don't see, and I know you're very leery of it, I don't see any downside in trying it out and seeing it, you know, it's up to you.
Yeah,
It's up to you.
I just
Like
have a
said,
problem with a
I-
3-family house on a 20-foot lot with no parking. What does that do to the neighbors? 3 families, that's 6 cars are gonna fight for parking on the street. You gotta fight, you know, you wanna go out at night, you say, well, if I go out at night, I can't get a parking spot, so, you know, sit home or call Uber to go out to dinner. That doesn't help a neighborhood. Putting a 3-family on a 20-foot lot and 0 parking.
Says 20 or less even,
Yeah,
20 on a 12-foot lot.
That's pre-existing, right?
Yeah, that's pre-existing.
Pre-existing.
Can I mention
So you couldn't
something?
subdivide that.
You couldn't
You couldn't subdivide into that.
Can I mention something? The character of Silver Lake is because Silver Lake was built around 1900. In 1900, nobody had cars, or very few people had cars. It was a horse and buggy day.
Exactly.
You know, but now you want to keep it the way it was then when there was no cars.
The places, think about it.
And I'm going to tell you something else. You mentioned Hudson County.
Yes.
You go try and get a parking space in Hudson County. Try Harrison. All right, try Harrison, try West New York. I was out with a girl one night. We had to go get a hotel room because she couldn't park near her house in West New York.
But she was living there.
Chair, that's on the record.
The thing is, Jerry,
You couldn't park. We looked for 2 hours for a parking spot.
listen, the thing is, she was living there, and a lot of people do choose to live in those places. to rip up the fabric of a certain community because you may not like it.
No, it's not that I don't like
wouldn't
it.
do
What I'm
that.
saying
Or
to you
anybody
is,
wouldn't like it.
that was the way it was built years ago.
And people still like
And
living that way.
it's not that they like it, they're stuck with it.
Well, no.
And a lot of
No,
cases that
that's
we
not
have on the
true.
zoning board report, Silver Lake,
That's not true.
is all problems with parking. Everybody complains about the parking.
Hold on, let me give up my testimony.
All right, one at a time, please.
All right, hold on, guys, let her
Let me say
answer.
this is my testimony. It's not that they're stuck with it. Those areas are the most sought after. They are the areas that people like to be in. If you look at an area, you say, what's your favorite place to be? Where do you like to go? What kind of streets do you like to walk up and down? Those are the places, like the New Hopes and the Montclairs, and people like those places. And Jersey City, Hoboken, yes, built in the 1800s. No parking, that's where people want to be. The parking and the cars should be somewhere else, and there should be people places. So the whole idea is to not destroy the fabric of the neighborhood by the car, and figure out a way to accommodate the car. But this zoning is about keeping the neighborhood whole.
I hope you realize this is a township, this is not a city.
I understand, and there are lots of ways to address it. If it becomes a problem, then there's ways to address it. Then we change the zoning, or change the parking requirements, or set up different parking services. There's lots of different, on-street parking is the easiest. Controlling the on-street parking well is the easiest way to deal with it. And once that's done right, those problems go away.
We have a couple of board members that have questions.
Okay.
Okay,
How
so
is-
one at a time.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
How is it done today? So the ordinance says what? Can somebody share that with me? I don't know all of them yet, so.
Well, building lots?
Yeah.
If you have a 25-foot lot, you have to go for a variance, right, Mr. Di Lorenzo?
Unless there was a house on it.
For a
If
new,
there was
a house
for
on
a
it,
new
If there
lot.
was a house on it previously,
Right.
you could build again.
Gotcha.
And then
So,
there's setback requirements, right?
And then there's requirements.
And I saw one
bulk
being built like on
requirements.
Franklin Street, and it's being set back from the other buildings. It looks like a gap, like a broken tooth. It doesn't fit. And if we keep building that way, the whole community will become that way. So you are changing the community by maintaining those
On
requirements.
Franklin Street?
I think it was Franklin Street, it might have been off the side, I don't know.
There might be heckle.
so now, I'm just trying to, so now what Andy said is, people that have multiple lots, or one big lot that wants to subdivide it to do that. When they subdivide, they have to come in front of us anyway, right? They have to give approval to subdivide,
Correct.
Yes.
right? They have to come, so that's controllable from that standpoint.
Is it or isn't it? If there's already an ordinance in place that allows them to have this subdividable lot, how do you deny it?
But is that part of
You
the?
can't subdivide
but is that-
it without-
Right, so my point is subdividing a lot part of this ordinance, or the updates, or no?
They'd be allowed.
The subdivision is a part of municipal land use law. Subdivision would be required.
So they
So it would have to come in front of
They
us.
have to come in.
Yes.
So my point is, then my next question, and I'm with you, because you live there, you know it better than anybody, I'm just asking you questions to wrap my ears around it for no other reason. How many lots are available in Silver Lake that can take this three-family on? Is there a lot? I don't know.
There's some, right, Mr. Di Lorenzo?
I don't
Some
know.
25-foot vacant lots?
There may be a couple, I
I
don't
know
know if there was
Heckler Street has
houses
a
on it, there
couple.
might not have been some houses on it, there may have been some houses with,
But now it doesn't matter if there was a house on it.
correct.
No, it does.
No, it doesn't.
No, this would actually.
Okay, I'm sorry, so maybe
Any
like you
lot,
said.
any lot could
So,
be
so,
built
so
on.
maybe like I said, maybe there should be a provision in there, like maybe 30 feet, then they would have to come in front of. But I like the fact of, call it standards, in my world, standards, right? You need to build a house with these requirements, right? Like you said, no setbacks, side width, no side width. I think that's where we should structure around,
Yeah.
in this case.
It's hard to say what a standard is, in Silver Lake especially, because there've been many standards. I have a 25-foot lot also in Silver Lake, and the structure was 25 feet. There were no side yards, but luckily I was on a corner and my neighbor had a driveway, so you didn't get the feel of being on top of anybody. But I wouldn't want to have to own a house in Silver Lake and have somebody build a house with 0 setbacks next to me. What would that do to windows? What would that just do to?
They can't,
You
they
couldn't do
literally
it
can't,
this
it's
winter.
law. they can't.
Right, there's
They have to-
fire,
They have to be,
I understand, but so where would this zero
So
setback
we,
come into play?
we could, yeah, I mean, that's an easy adjustment, if that's something that is a concern. Like I said, it's typical to have 5 feet, 2 or 3, at a minimum. And whenever you do that, the 3 feet can have windows, you need 3 feet for windows as well. So that accommodates windows, accommodates side yard setback instead of 0. And since you do have an ordinance in place that allows building homes on 25 feet, only when there was a house there before, there's probably very few that there weren't. And it's also hard to justify treating those differently. Just because you grew up and you're used to seeing it without a home, if this guy has a 25-foot lot and he can put a house there, and this guy can't, they go to the Board of Adjustment, they have an argument that they're gonna win anyway. I mean,
Yes, but
so-
it's for a
so-
one family, not a 3. We've never approved one for more than one family on a 25 by 100, or even less. We've had even less. Everyone has a right to build on their property, and we take that very seriously. But we will not approve something that is ridiculous, like he said, a 3-family on a 20 by 100-foot lot. That would never get approved by the zoning
The
board.
3 is the issue, maybe is that the issue? I mean,
Maybe.
That's my biggest concern, of course,
well,
yeah.
then the
If it's a
3
1-family, I don't see
Yeah,
a
Take it
problem.
down.
just do it to 2. I mean, that's the 3.
Even 2 on a 20-foot lot?
Well, 25, we're talking 25.
Man,
We're not-
what's the
we're not
problem
going
with the
20.
1? What's
it's a
the problem
different
with the
district,
1?
Jared. The rest of the
Yeah.
town remains the way you're saying. It's a different district. and
But
it's
still, if
already
it's a different
existing in
district,
that
what's
area
wrong
like
with a
that.
1-family on a 25 by 100-foot lot?
There's nothing that's permitted. But on the other hand, it's also an area that has access to mass transit. And when it has access to mass transit, you should at least accommodate some density, a level of density that can use that mass transit, because that's where you have it. And the neighborhood has the character traditionally of meeting that kind of standard. So the fit is there, it's just the comfort level isn't, and maybe 3 is too much, but 2 is something that you have.
I think
in
building a
town.
garage, building a parking structure or garage for the light rail is a good idea, so everybody in the town can benefit from the light rail.
Yeah,
You know, putting a 3-family on a 20-foot lot and saying they're gonna use the light rail, I say no way. Building a lot or parking structure so everyone in town would park there, get on a train and use cars less, I'm for that.
well, I think from what I'm hearing, it sounds as though there'd be more comfort if there was no 0 setback. So we can do a 2 and a 3 side yard setback. There's already permission for construction on a 25-foot lot. And Board of Adjustment tends to approve those as well. And the other fear is the 3-family. So maybe it is 2-family, 25 feet with 2 feet and 3-foot setback. That's what it sounds like to me in the discussion.
You know, how does the rest of the board feel about 2-family on a 25-foot lot? I mean, I don't wanna just dominate here, I wanna get other people's.
Mr. Chairman, I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with
Yeah.
that.
I'm all right with it.
Listen, I think we should,
I agree with, I'm sorry, I.
Marion.
Marion, I agree with, in that area, you have to take advantage of that transportation. I know we all live in the area, and I do agree with her as far as, trying to compare Silver Lake to Hoboken, all right, that's but I'm 57 years old. I remember going to Hoboken 30 years ago to restaurants and, Biggie's Clam Bar, when it was in the back, and talking to the owners of these places that wish they got involved like 20 years ago, so saying 50 years ago, when Hoboken, nobody wanted to go there, and maybe Newark's on its rise, a lot's happening in Newark, and maybe Silver Lake has a future, and I think that's something we need to think about. I know parking's an issue. I live in the Soho section. I'm on the upper side of Newark Avenue, but I know the hospital, the big, like the chairman said, in the daytime you can't park there because nobody wants to use the parking garage.
I should really interest the hospital to require the employees to use They're parking.
I'll
Nobody
take-
wants to pay.
I'll-
As far
I'll-
as
I'll take
residential
that back.
parking,
To the council.
But what about, I think we should look into that resident-only parking for the
Yeah.
resident streets.
Yeah,
I
why
think we should look
should
at it.
one street be permitted parking?
Yeah.
The whole Silver Lake should be permitted parking, so
That's tough,
I
that's tough.
think it's
Well,
great for
yeah.
the councilman to be here and to hear this, and he can bring it back to the board that we could get permitted parking throughout Silver
I
Lake.
think requiring the employees
Right.
to park in the parking decks is a better alternative.
or even
I
in
think
the
that would give them no
daytime, in
choice
the
though, right?
daytime,
You don't
everybody's
want
out to
resident-only
work.
parking, or?
You know,
I think
everything,
it's just tough to enforce.
You
like
can't,
a five,
the only problem
all the
with
streets are
residential
parking
parking
permit.
and only restricting it to residential parking is the people that actually come from other places and, you know, to use the library. This is why garage there will be
Well,
perfect,
that's what we're
because it
working on
will
garage too.
invite
Well, the goal is to make it
towns
work.
to come.
You know, it's gotta work for the residents, and it's gotta work for the people
Yeah,
we're trying to bring to the area too. It's gotta work.
One thing you'll understand, I mean, I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but the residential parking permit ordinance doesn't really, the majority of it, it's overnight. Like, if you actually read the statute, residential parking permit is from 2 AM to 6 AM. And that's designed, it was spoke about at the meeting the other day, it was for the border streets for like Nutley, that they can't park on the street. So it's, I don't know if the council, again, obviously the ordinance get approved by the council. I don't think these parking problems we're talking about would come under the current ordinance. I think would have to be a new one that would establish parking, say 24 hours a day or more hours. But right now, as the ordinance, to the best of my knowledge, I think Belmont Avenue has certain times during the day for the businesses over there, but the majority of the residential parking is 2 AM to 6 AM, just to prevent that overnight parking. So that, just saying, add those streets to the ordinance, that's not gonna change parking in Silver Lake.
Should we
That's not gonna
adjust-
help anything if you build a 1 or a 3-family house.
But it also helps that the residents go out at night, as Mr. Venero was saying, that when they come home, there's a spot on the street.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
towards the
after
evening
work
hours,
though,
it would be-
not an after work. If you
Yeah.
come home at, I don't know what time you come home, say between anywhere 5 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the residential, if you add your street to that ordinance, that's not gonna guarantee you a
Right.
spot at 5:30 in the afternoon. At 2 o'clock in the morning, it'll reserve you a spot.
So
So
could we-
if that, I'm not saying not to go there, I'm just telling you from like the police point of view, if you're gonna go that route,
Special ordinance
I think it would have to be a
for
new
Silver Lake.
parking ordinance
I
that have to
agree.
be created, because the one we have, I don't think it'll apply to the situation that we're talking about.
We'll bring it up and open.
Thank you. Any other members have any questions about this wealth of information? So it's really a lot to digest.
Well,
Really,
the goal is to make it work for everybody, so the conversation's necessary,
right.
but, and I think a new parking ordinance would help. And I-
Also, I had a question. It prohibited gated communities in the town? No more gated communities?
There were gated communities.
Wow. I mean, that Essex Park to me is a beautiful gated community. I think that works.
One,
Well, just to add on to that, you're 100% right, it is somewhat gated. However, it is doing some illegal stuff, because in the back, when we proposed that site, the gates were supposed to be just a chain link, so the fire truck would
Right.
go through.
For emergency vehicles.
It's much more severe, and it's very hazardous. The truck would never get in that back anymore, without big damage to our fire trucks.
I don't think you have room to build them anyway.
Well, I just,
Well,
don't know the.
But it is, they're breaking the ordinance.
Yeah.
And
it's a
what's your
philosophy.
thinking with that? Yeah.
It's a philosophy, it's an us and them philosophy. Instead of coming into a town and fitting in with the town, it's coming into a town and separating itself out. A lot of the older Society Hill type neighborhoods would do that, and they're, and in certain areas, they were, like you said, it's liked, but it's liked by the people that want to set themselves apart from everybody else. And it's not as healthy for the community, and it's better when people buy into a community and they know that this is the street I live on, and they can walk down that street, they're part of that street, rather than being an enclave. It's just, and especially in an urban area, in older suburbs, it's healthier to have it, that's what I've seen. And it's been the practice, and I can say this, even though Jersey City is different, you would think Jersey City of all places would want that, and they do have one Society Hill like that, that has been prohibited now for over 20 years. All of the new residential development, even the very dense development, they have to build new streets to connect into the existing streets, so the new investment looks exactly like the old neighborhoods and fits in. And it turns out that the people that live there, that already live there, like that better, because their neighborhood just kind of gets these new homes in it, and it gets new shops, and it just gets improved, rather than the improvement just being for them.
I think,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think attaching to the grid too, I mean, it allows traffic to disperse instead of forcing it out to one road, and that one road is basically backed up all day long.
I'll tell you the truth, at Essex Park, I haven't seen that backup traffic. I mean, I was a little apprehensive when we approved it years ago, but I never see a problem with people getting in and out of there.
No, I mean,
It just flows pretty good, no matter what time of day you go by it.
there are a lot of older projects that are like that, and that's how they are, and they've settled in well, but the new trend is to not do that any longer.
I do have one more question. I don't know if it pertains, side width, what do you call that?
Setback?
Not setback, this
Side
way,
yard?
on the side.
Side setbacks, yeah.
Side setbacks, right? So when you take, like, my family, when you have garages, right? Is that part of it, even though it's, if it's behind the house, or if it's attached to the house, that also would require a side set, right? Or whatever.
Accessory structures have a different one in there, yeah.
Okay, and I only say that, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, and not just for Silver Lake, I'm saying in general, I have a single car garage, I can't fit a car in it. Cars are different sizes, and when you open the door, who has a garage here, and who puts a car in the garage, and who can get out of it for both on each side? You can't. You just can't do it. So is there anything that we need to consider where that side structure, whatever it is, this accessory, you don't need it when you have a garage. You know what I mean? Because you can gain another 2 or 3 feet on the width of the garage, so you can actually use a garage.
Well, in new construction, they could choose the size of the garage, they could build a size that
Yeah, but-
accommodates modern cars.
But my point is, if they're not allowed, if they still need that side set
They
for
don't have the
2 or 3
space, yeah.
feet, when they want to use it for a garage, they shouldn't be held back from doing so.
Traditionally, that if it's an attached garage to the building, I think that's a question for Frank, but I think it counts as a setback of the building. But if it's a separate detached garage, it could have the 1-foot setback that's being proposed here.
Yeah, but like in my garage, it's set back, I still can't get a car.
Oh,
I couldn't make it bigger
that.
anyway.
You can't make it bigger?
I couldn't make it wider because of an ordinance you have to be, well, the size.
The other way, more
But, yeah, but I'm saying, then you gotta come this way. But my point being is that something we should look at too, for everything with that side set? I mean, again, here's not one shoe fits all.
Mr. De Lorenzo, what's the side setback for a garage now, accessory structure?
Well, accessory, right now it's 4, but now we're changing it to Mary has it now.
Yeah, that handles that.
Oh, it does?
For detached, for detached.
Okay, no, thank you, Frank.
For detached.
That, if you look at it that way, yeah, that handled that.
I'm just looking at it, okay.
Also, the hospital district, is that like the footprint of the hospital, or does it extend past the hospital, or?
It's the footprint of the hospital,
Okay. Because I see like drug programs and stuff, substance abuse treatments, and
They're prohibited.
if they're on the hospital property, for that, but I don't want like a methadone clinic
No,
opening up 2
that's
blocks
listed
from
as
the hospital.
prohibited anyway, whether or not, that's a question for the attorney, but that's listed as not being permitted,
What's not
the
permitted?
methadone clinic.
Yeah, substance abuse treatment facility.
I think it's by definition, the equivalent of a methadone clinic is more of a slang, yes.
And that's permitted.
Where?
Under permitted use under the hospital zone, substance abuse treatment facility, drug
In the
treatment.
hospital only, basically?
Only hospital.
That's what I want to make sure. Yeah, on the hospital property, I'm fine.
So anybody comes in, they want to do anything anywhere else, you could easily say no, Board of Adjustment can easily say no, this is where it goes,
Right.
on the hospital.
So what's next steps?
This?
Yeah, I'm agree with you.
At this time, we're going to open it up to the public. Have any questions or comments?
I'll go away.
Mr. Frantantoni?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Ms. Bucci.
Ms. Pucci? I'm sorry.
Ms. Bucci, you've talking about the light rail. How familiar are you with New Jersey Transit light rail system?
I don't work for New Jersey Transit. I've taken the light rail, but I don't know, I'm not an employee of it.
As a planner?
I'm not a transportation planner. So I can't give you the details of, or testify as far as the system itself.
All right, in your research, are you aware that New Jersey has a plan called NJ Transit 2020?
They have master plans, and they have their future build-out and future phases.
You know, everybody talking about the light rail. In 1995, New Jersey Transit held a public hearing. They came out with that plan. The reason they called it 2020, because by the year 2020, they were going to have that 25-year plan done. It was, if I recall, because I was the only one who attended the public hearing down in Gateway, they were going to have 40 or 48 light rail stations all over the state, and you would not need a car. This was the pie in the sky thing, and you can go anywhere in New Jersey with it. I think they built 4. I think they got one for Touch and the Reticent, ours, one in North Jersey here. There's only 4 of them. So, and 2020 isn't far away. So they didn't do it in 24 years. So all these proposals, you know, they sound, they're not practical. They're not practical things, not everybody. We have an ordinance, like the chairman here said, you need 40 by 100 for one family lot, and you need 2 parking spaces. Well, the house across the street from me was sold 2 years ago. A week after they moved in, at night, sheetrock down the basement, there's now 7 cars. Last month, the house next door to was sold. A young couple which only had 1 car. Now we got 5 cars. And on the weekend, there's 2 New York cars there. So just those 2 houses, there's 14 cars, and they're young people. They're millennials that live across the street. So the thing that millennials don't use cars, I mean, we can't park. My wife had to go to my granddaughter's event tonight. I had to take my truck out of the yard to put in front of the house so I can park, so she can park when she gets home tonight. So all these things sound good and all. But the other thing which you said, and one of the members there said I was wrong, I wrote it down, maybe I misheard you. Did you say 1, 2, 3 family also on a 20-foot lot or less? Did I mishear that?
No, it's not or less. And from the discussion, it looks like the board is looking at the lowest that has been done is 25, and that's what's being looked at.
But I hope the board looked at 2 or 3 families. I agree with the chairman. I mean, you can't go. And the other thing with these sides, even 2 feet, I'm a contractor. What about customer's got a problem? How do you put a ladder on? How do you repair? How do you paint? How do you maintain it? You know, it's those are the things that you can't do. I got houses. I got a house in South Orange they built years ago. It was built, and there's 3 inches there. They got rodents make nests in there.
Well, just to get back on the topic of, I guess, the original comment, parking and control of parking is not this ordinance. This is zoning, and if there is a parking problem on the street, then that is an issue that should be addressed with the on-street parking ordinances. So that's the one thing. And then as far as New Jersey Transit and their light rail systems across the state, we got a lot done since that original hearing. They did get a lot done, and the systems that have been in place and have went into construction in '95 and have become part of the community. Most familiar with Jersey City, obviously, but that went from just being a light rail connection of empty waterfront development sites to sites where people live there now. And if you look at that light rail, there are young school children on those trains going to school in the morning. There's people taking the trains to Newport Mall, or going to Hoboken, or going to Bayonne, or they live in Bayonne, or they work in Jersey City, or Hoboken, and from Hoboken they go to different parts of the state or to New York. they use that, and it has become an important fabric of the community. And it takes a while, it doesn't happen overnight, but it does take a while, and Silver Lake, at least around the periphery of it, and if there's a parking garage to address the needs for the rest of the town, really could be like that too. And that's what some of this is for, because we look at how those stations have impacted other communities, and that could be how Belleville is as well.
Well, in real estate, the three words that always go, location, location, location.
And Belleville's got it.
And, well, we don't have, like the chairman said, the Hudson River and the other amenities they have.
Well, I think
So
we have the
hope
location, I'll tell you that.
Listen, we're never gonna have $4,000 a month in rent for a studio apartment, that's
Well,
not what we're going for.
Just
You know, it's not
last
gonna be
week,
like
I didn't
that.
bring it with me, just last week, a big article about Montclair. Everybody's town net development, big article, the serious problems they're having.
What are they?
What
What are
Moving
they?
out.
Point it out. What is it?
People are
Who's
moving out. The
Why?
developers are finding harder and harder to get enough people to pay $2,600 for a two-bedroom apartment. That's another problem they're having down
People are
there.
moving out? People are
What?
moving in Montclair?
No, people aren't moving in. They
People are
can't
not
get
moving
enough
in.
people who can come up with $2,600 for a two-bedroom apartment. The other thing happened, the gentrification is changing out the long-time residents. The other thing they mentioned, the people with the high-end houses can't get the prices for their house no more. They're selling the median houses, $400,000 to $800,000. They get these people with $1.5 million houses. The one had to sell it, and one of the realtors, a friend of mine, got it, come down to $890,000. The young couple loved it. Good, we'll take it. They go to the office, when they saw $33,000 in taxes, they walked away. They could afford $890,000, they could afford $33,000 a year. And that's what happened. And when you tell
All right,
them this stuff, I agree with you. The
Get
more
your
you
point, Mr.
build,
Frantantoni.
the more the value of the home's gonna go up, but that means the taxes go up. And it hurt the town. And it's happening in Montclair. It was just in the record just a week ago. I cut the article out.
Anybody else? Mr. Sheldon?
Good evening, Michael Sheldon, 47 Floyd Street. Earlier this evening, there was a lot of attention devoted to the Silver Lake area and building on undersized lots, and I agree with you, Mr. Venero. Putting a three-family home on a lot that is only 20 feet is beyond absurd. But there's another aspect of this document that is, in my opinion, a little insidious or nefarious. And what I'm referring to is changes to the RB zone. Now, the RB zone, as I'm sure everyone here knows, is the two-family zone. And on that map, with my limited vision, it's all of those olive-colored areas. There's a lot of RB zone throughout Belleville. But if you look at permitted uses, principal uses, item number three has been partially deleted, but a new part has been inserted. Three-family dwellings, not to exceed one three-family dwelling on each lot. So effectively, what this proposal is doing is saying goodbye to two-family zones, and you're now going to have RA1, RA2, which are one-family zones, and the RB zone is going to become the zone of three-family houses. So, for all intent and purposes, if this plan is approved as is, we say goodbye to two-family zones. But going a little bit further, Mr. DeGuercio, as always, has all of the numbers for the zones 100% correct. Currently, according to the zoning schedule, for a two-family home, you need 5,000 square feet, a width of 50, and a depth of 100. For multifamily, as Mr. DeGuercio correctly pointed out, it's 10,000 square feet, you need a width of 100 and a lot depth of 100 feet. But if this plan goes through, and Mr. Venero, you pointed out earlier this evening that last year you heard a case on July 12th, which was Florence Avenue. You recused yourself, and as you correctly recounted, the applicant wanted to subdivide a lot that was 8,250 square feet, roughly in half. He was going to create one lot, 4143, 4107 for the other. He wanted to replace a one-family house with two-family houses. You guys heard the case. You actually, I believe, you testified against the applicant. It was denied, 5-4. A month later, the same board heard a case for Baldwin Place. There was a vacant lot, 34.5 feet in width, had over 5,000 square feet total area, but it's in the RC zone. And by the way, the Florence Avenue case was also the RC zone. Both of these were RC cases. The Baldwin Place applicant wanted to put a two-family home on this vacant lot. After you heard this case, 7-0 against it. Now, in the minutia of this proposal, there's a new bit of mathematics. It says somewhere, and I didn't highlight it, but the new math is that when you have fractional parts, such as 34.5 feet, which is the width for the Baldwin Place, you now round up to the next highest integer. So according to this, that lot would now become 35 feet, and right off the top, it now satisfies the new zoning schedule, which calls for, under the RB zone, 3,500 square feet, 35 lot width. So while you denied this Baldwin Place application last year, rightly so, if it came back now, not only would you have to approve it, but it would be permitted to put a three-family home on the same lot.
Can I answer mine?
Well,
Sure, we'll just wait till he's done.
I could
You
answer
done,
that.
Mr. Sheldon, or?
Well, no, I have more, but if you want to comment on this part, I'm just very concerned
Somebody would
that,
like to make a
that
comment.
you're essentially doing away with two-family. You're basically undermining all of the residents, all the homes in the two-family. You're going to have a rush to have a lot of people now subdivide the lots in the RB zones to try to put in an overwhelming amount of three-family houses.
Mr. Banda has a rebuttal.
Well, do you want to, I mean,
No, you go first, and I can.
well, that application actually was, they didn't have any, they wanted, I think, 3 over 3, and they were parking cars in front of the front door. That's not allowed.
No.
And basically, they have to have a parking spot per bedroom. So for them to be able to build it, they still wouldn't qualify for what they were asking for on that lot.
Yeah, so one of the things, like, just as Mr. Banda said,
I remember the door would open.
Right.
the use is one thing. So if the three-family use is permitted, that does not mean that it's permitted without conditions. There's specific conditions for a three-family in the construction code that have to be accommodated. People can't go in and put in a third unit. Most of the places, they will not qualify unless they spend a considerable amount of money to make that unit accommodate that unit, the third unit. So retrofitting, all those things, it doesn't mean people can rush in and make the change. The other requirement too is there's parking now required per bedroom. So the additional bedrooms for that unit would require additional parking. It would require a variance if they couldn't accommodate it. The other additional standards in the zone have design and building standards that would require higher quality components to the building, materials, and other standards. So there are things that using example of a random case, it's like apples and oranges, because you couldn't come in and do that. There'd be other variances that this ordinance would say you're not allowed to do that anymore. You can't park in front, you would have, you'd have to have a higher standard of facade, and those kind of things would apply.
Notwithstanding your comments, and I'm aware
Yeah,
of this,
I mean,
I'm
I'm
also
just
a
trying
member
to,
of the
just
zoning board.
explain it.
But what I see here is that you are effectively, through the back door, you are allowing now massive development in the RB zone of three-family houses, where previously three-family homes would not be permitted in the RB zone, but you are now making it not only easily permissible, but you're lowering the threshold. Instead of keeping it at 5,000 square feet and a 50 feet lot width, which is the current zoning schedule, you are now going to allow three-family homes to be built in the RB zone with only 35 feet in lot width. And I just think this is going to create enormous, it's already a problem. Everywhere in Belleville we have parking issues, but you're going to exacerbate this problem by making this modification to the RB zone. Leave the RB zone as a two-family zone. You have other multifamily zones. Why are you trying to, through the back door, trying to change the RB zone into an RC zone?
I object to the back door, because it's not a back door, it's right up there, right in front. One of the challenges that has been experienced in lots of places are illegal three-family units and conversions. It happens a lot. And they result in the buildings ending up as three units, sort of on the sly. And then you end up with the conditions that are unsafe, and you're not collecting taxes on them. So the best way to approach it is not the back door. The best way to approach it is to look and say, look, these are the places where there's three-family homes. Sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't. If they're going to want to do them, we're going to give them specific standards, have those standards be identified in the construction code, have specific parking requirements, and if they can't meet them, then they can't have them.
What is the parking requirements now if you put a three-family?
Right.
With 3 bedrooms?
I'm not sure what it is now. I know that now we're requiring parking per bedroom.
2 per unit.
2 per unit. Now it's going to be.
So it's less.
It's 1
Right
per
now,
bedroom.
it's 6 for a three-family.
And
And you're saying if you built a three-family with 3 bedrooms,
if
They
it
would need
would-
like 9.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah,
nice.
then so they would have to really come before a board, they'd end up in that case before the Board of Adjustment. And if they,
Possible to build a three?
how much you?
You would need like a 75 by 100 or 100 by 100 lot. They would need a massive
lot.
lot.
You need a larger lot.
So
And-
in
it wouldn't
essence, you
even
really
be-
can't build a three-family.
Yeah.
house.
But what it does is identify and try and address the illegal threes, and that's why it's there.
Well, if the
And
illegal
it's,
threes are illegal, so why
That's
make
right.
them legal?
Because you're gonna get them, and then you're gonna get them worse. Because
That's right.
now you're dealing with the parking of the illegals, and it's full, and they're not gonna come to you.
Every time they come before
You can't
us
monitor it.
as a pre-existing non-conforming use, unless it was allowed, a lot of times we knock it down.
That's fine, but they're still doing it before they come to you, and that's what's getting the parking issues on some of these other streets. It's even for the single-family districts, if you wanna put up a 4-bedroom house, you have to have 4-car parking now. Before that, it was 2 cars. So you're having more parking problems before than you would now. Now we're
Oh, I
increasing.
agree with the 1 car per bedroom. I agree with that, I'll be honest with you. I think that's very good. There's certain things about this I do like, I want you to know that.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
trying to.
I have a few more questions. In regard to the BG zone, the new commercial residential mixed-use zone that expands all of Washington Avenue, there are a number of changes to prohibited uses, and 4 of these are of particular concern to me. Under prohibited uses, section C, it says, and this is the BG zone, this is all of Washington Avenue. It says that prohibited uses now include gas stations, restaurants with drive-in facilities, drive-up banks, and drive-up pharmacies. So what are you going to do then? I mean, I know, I see some of these places we grandfathered in, but what you're effectively now saying is that entities like McDonald's, Valley National Bank, Walgreens, the one that just opened, as well as the one, that these are now illegal uses in the BG zone because they have drive-up service, or in other cases, we have gas stations. So your plan is to do away with gas stations on Washington Avenue eventually, and do away with McDonald's and any little, the Taco Bells, etc. According to this, those are no longer permitted uses.
The uses
along
are
Washington
permitted,
Avenue.
the drive component is not. Because the idea
Well, if
is,
you
the
get
idea
rid of the
is,
drive-up of
it's-
Taco Bell and McDonald's, are gonna go out of business overnight. Most of their business is the drive-through.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
and
You don't want them there.
in truth, it's better if they have to ask for that. Then they have to come before a board and they have to show you that they can accommodate the stacking of the cars, they can have safe traffic circulation. If it's just permitted in an area that's really dominated by pedestrian traffic, it's not good for the town.
I'm just
So
glad-
this way, if it's prohibited, it doesn't mean they can't ask for a variance and prove that they can make it work on the unusual site. Maybe it's a corner site where it does work, but it's safer not to have them, especially on Washington Avenue.
Yep.
I'm just glad for Walgreens' sake that they have both of their stores operating, and so that's now grandfathered in. They have their drive-through pharmacies, and there's really nothing you can do.
Yeah, they should be under a building with 5 stories above them, but
All
whatever.
right, well, that's your opinion. You can talk when you have, if you want to.
That's right, and I will.
Manny, please. The next thing I wanted to ask is the table for affordable housing. and unfortunately, my printouts, I don't have page numbers here, but it says the minimum percentage of affordable units for residential development shall be in accordance with the following. The table has total number of units and the minimum percentage of affordable units. That's not the issue. What follows underneath that table is of concern to me. It says, with the approval of the planning board, the applicant can provide an in lieu payment of $25,000 for each required affordable housing unit. So in essence, if I understand this correctly, you would be giving developers a chance to buy out of providing affordable housing. And it would be if I understand this correctly, it's a one-time fee. So they just give the town hall $25,000, and with each $25,000 payment, goodbye affordable housing, and they put in.
That's the way it works throughout the state.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I can explain that, I just want to read it. Can you give me the section number? I just want to make sure.
I have section I, it's I.
25, excuse me, 23 dash something.
Affordable housing.
23 dash something?
It's on the same page with additional parking regulations and affordable housing. Unfortunately, again, I don't have, for some reason, when I printed out these individual pages,
Past the
they didn't
BG.
include pages.
2 pages past the BG zone.
23-7.8, permitted in DG commercial residential.
I just wanted confirmation that if this particular change goes through,
Okay.
that it would be correct that a developer could do away with any COA obligations, any affordable housing requirements by simply giving the town hall a check for $25,000, and that would do away with.
I can explain, yes, I can explain that. I mean, that is not uncommon. It's part of settlement agreements and a part of the practice for fair share and affordable housing throughout the state. This component actually already exists in the ordinance. I believe it's listed for $80,000 instead of $50,000. Part of the analysis that we came up with was that was not realistic. And also that there's an additional fee now that's in place that's also been adopted by the state that localities can adopt, and that's a development fee that is used for, it's part of the application fees for development that are used for affordable housing. So money is already collected for affordable housing from that source. So this was also changed. And in fact, in lots of places, we do affordable housing planning for many towns in the state. And this is common, and 50,000 is the common number. That's the standard.
But again, my understanding is that Belleville has not fully satisfied its COA obligations, but a condition like this isn't going to help.
It's not, they don't have a COA obligation, they have a rehab obligation. It's a little different. And so this actually is better suited for that because there can be monies put towards a rehabilitation program that existing residents can use for existing buildings. So in this case, it actually is more beneficial than the traditional COA model for Belleville.
I don't see in reality how this is going to actually help. We'll have to just see how that plays out. The last question I had, and this is section 23-8.2B, pop-up cafe park development requirements. Part B says there's a requirement now of a submission of a licensing fee of $1,000 for each season of use. Is this a new charge that restaurateurs, anyone who is wishing to run an outdoor alfresco seating situation, they would have to pay $1,000 a year to the town hall to run a little outdoor cafe? Is that correct?
This is cutting edge. This is one of the things that you would see in, like, you'd see it in Montclair, you'd see it downtown or Hoboken. A lot of cities across the country are doing this where there's a parking space or two that is used for outdoor seating, it's some landscaping, there's a little deck put there. It can only happen in certain instances, and they're not cheap. They cost, sometimes they cost $15,000 to $35,000 to do. So there's an investment put in place, and they're extremely well liked. And a lot of towns go out of their way to try and make them happen. And so this is a way for Belleville to have that as a possibility out there. It's not something that'll happen overnight, and like I said, they're expensive, and it's unlikely there'll be somebody that really wants to do this right away. But the idea was we're updating the ordinance to modernize it and make it address things that people want to see. People do want to see this and use it, and that's what it's for.
I agree. I like seeing the outdoor cafes in Belleville. A number of restaurateurs already have them. The Roscommon House, Alberto's on Washington, a number of places have outdoor seating areas. My concern is this another tax on merchants, on business interests, that they now are going to have to pay $1,000 a year to be able to set up a couple tables outside of their door?
No, this isn't for, the cafe price doesn't change. This would be for the parking space in front of their unit, or their space.
All right, submission of $1,000, a licensing fee of $1,000 for each season of use. I assume that this was referring to what they would have to pay to legally have a table set up in
There
front of them.
actually is a revision to the outdoor cafe ordinance. It's just before that. And
Well, let me just cut to the
it's called
chase.
Sidewalk Cafe, it's 23-8.2A, and that's the Sidewalk Cafe, and there's no $1,000 fee, the fee stays the same. There's specific standards that are set up so that 6 feet of sidewalk has to be maintained. There'd have to be a barrier between the chairs.
Let me just cut to the chase, and Mr. DiLorenzo hopefully can answer this. Currently, do any merchants setting up tables outside their business, do they have to pay a licensing fee each year? And if this plan goes through, will they then have to pay? If Mr. DiLorenzo...
They have to pay now.
They have to pay now. They are paying. What do they have to pay for that luxury of being able to have an al fresco presence in front of their business?
They pay additional $100 towards their license.
This
one, it's
We're
going to be
raising
the
to
same, they're not
1,000?
changing.
Yeah, it's not changing.
It's not, it stays at 100, it's not raising to 1,000?
No, that's for the parking space.
Just for
That's the
Yeah.
parking.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Frank Antoni?
Phyllis Frank Antoni, Mount Prospect Avenue. In Fort Lee, they build a lot of luxury apartments. I mean, high-rise, beautiful apartments. But there's a problem. My sister and my brother-in-law live in Fort Lee. I can't go visit them. You cannot park. All the streets have permit parking. So you want to build stuff like that here. We got a parking problem as it is. We're not going to be able to park at all.
Fort Lee
Yes.
has, I think, higher density than Jersey City's waterfront.
We can't park in Jersey City either.
Yeah, I mean, those types of buildings they should accommodate, and if they don't, then change the township.
They have parking for the residents.
But they should have parking for residents, visitors as well. They
Well,
should accommodate
that's
that.
the people that run the town that made all permit parking, so you can't park when you go there.
Yeah.
So when I want to meet my sister, I have to meet her halfway in between, because I can't park in Jersey City. And, I mean, in Fort Lee. But I wanted to ask you, we're talking about these things on the street. Montclair, I think, has one on Claremont Avenue.
Yes.
I go up that way quite often because I go up to my daughter's house up in Roseland. That is a disaster with traffic. You cannot, when there's traffic coming, backs it up all the way almost to the railroad. So it's not something that is going to be that great.
I'm not familiar with Montclair's particular one, but this does not interfere with the flow of traffic. It takes basically where parking would be. It doesn't take up any
Well, this is in the street.
Doesn't
Where
take up traffic.
parking would be, but it still infringes
Yeah,
on
it
the
should, it's
traffic
not permitted to infringe. I don't know if Montclair's does, but this wouldn't be.
flow. Montclair does.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kevin Bing. My father and I operate a business on Greylock Avenue in the Valley. I think we're currently in an industrial zone, and I don't have access to the draft plan. But can you talk a little bit more about the VB1 and the VB2 and like what the future of industrial uses would be in the Valley?
So the goal of the VB1 maybe just the light purple, is like, I think I said at the beginning, to be more of, and I'll read the purpose to you, the 10th of Valley Business 1 District, situated closer and adjacent to Washington Avenue corridor. It's located with immediate access to the commercial corridor. It makes it especially suitable to provide for flexible spaces to meet the needs of modern businesses and industries. Uses permitted within this zone contain the characteristics of both traditional commercial and semi-industrial operations, while also serving as an economic development zone to complement the businesses nearby on Washington Avenue. Such uses include, but are not limited to, artisanal manufacturing, research and development, opportunities for demonstration projects, craft manufacturing, and light fabrication. The list of uses is long and includes everything from health clubs, laboratories, outdoor recreation, distilleries, artist live workspace, but also basically fabrication and the other types of industrial projects listed. So a lot of times you'll see uses like a brewery or a makerspace mixed in with industrial uses, and because they're not listed, they're not permitted. Meanwhile, they're perfectly suitable to be in that kind of district. Maybe a woodworking shop, something like that, that would be permitted here. That's the idea for this district. And the VB2 zone permits those plus the more traditional truck-related uses and warehousing.
Anybody else?
Diane Rothwell, Cortlandt Street. And while I appreciate your concern, Mr. Venero, Mr. Conti, in regards to the possibility of having one single family home to be knocked down and possibly one or two, three family homes built in its place, because there was a resident property there and the property was subdivided. And the concern with parking, you're talking about a minimum of at least 6 cars, but quite possibly as much as maybe 9 to 12 cars. But aside of that, you're talking about the impact of the population in regards to the township and the services within that town. The schools, the fire, the police department and everything. And you're talking about lowering the side allowances of the properties. On my home in Cortlandt Street, just a few years ago, there was a fire in the warehouse behind us. And there is at least 25 to 30 feet between the homes. Because of that fire, the fire department still had to go through our properties to extinguish that fire. So if you eliminate the side access from 5 feet to 2 and 3 or to 0, if there's an emergency in the back of that property, in the yard, if there's a structure back there or in the back of the building, you're putting those families, those 4 to 6 to 8 families on those 2 new developments in jeopardy. And I think it's highly irresponsible and something that needs to be reconsidered. If you have a single family, you're allowed to put a single family. If you have a 2-family, you're allowed to put a 2-family. To allow to open it up and say, well, there was a structure there, you can build whatever you want. My property is 70 by 100, and if it happened to be in Silver Lake, you're telling me that I can build at least 5 3-family homes there. That's irresponsible.
They're different neighborhoods.
If my home is in Silver Lake and my property as it is right now, if I picked it up and moved it into Silver Lake and I wanted to knock down my 2-family duplex and subdivide it, as you were saying, well, I could put up a 3-family home, it's 100 feet wide. I can turn around and say, oh, here, wait, I want 5 homes there, 3 families each. That's irresponsible. That's totally uncalled for, and I hope the council doesn't take this into review. And I have family that work with real estate and in New York City and all along the waterfronts. It, as big and booming as it is, they're having trouble filling the vacancies everywhere along the waterfront. in Montclair. Everywhere where all the new developments are, they're having a hard time filling them. Just a few years ago, I went over to Lyndhurst, and I went to 3 big developments over there, on Route 3, on Orient Way, and down in the back on Wall Street.
I don't know about the incident with the fire in your neighborhood, but I mean, I can't say, and I'm not a construction person, but zoning aside, zoning is one step. That zoning, and those buildings can't get built unless they meet the construction code requirements when they're reviewed by fire.
But when you come in and say, you know what, well here, this is what we propose to change the zoning on it, you know, you can have 20-foot lot or a 25-foot lot, and you can go from a 1-family to a 3-family townhouse. That's irresponsible.
When they go to build that, regardless of the zoning, when they go to build that, there will have to be safety and construction standards that are met, or even if the zoning permits it, it still couldn't be built. Fire will have to review that and sign off on it.
And then the comment, you know what, well, let's do this first and see how it works out, and then you can always pull back and say, you're opening up a Pandora's box. The foot's already through the door. How are you going to close that door when you have developers wanting to come in, and people who are supporting developers that are on the council and on the board here, and pushing for something like this, to turn around, their foot's already in the door. You'll never be able to pull that tiger back and say, you know what, close the door, we can't let it out.
This, I'm a planner, so like what I do and what we strive to do is building neighborhoods, building communities. I don't serve developers, and that's, you know, I don't look at it that way. I try and look at, that's why it's based in the master plan, it's based on goals and objectives, things that we've heard that the town wants to see, and the regulations are put in place for the benefit of the residents, for the benefit of the neighborhoods, and not for developers.
Well, this township is only 3 miles wide. We have 36,000 residents as it is, and our schools are overcrowded, and our fire department and the police department, as good as they are and everything else, to have a single family home and say, well, you know what, now you can put 3, you're taxing the community in of itself, and it's irresponsible.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Vic Mafucci, Continental Avenue. A couple things. The 3 families being permitted in the RB zone, would that mean the current illegal 3 families would now be legal?
They would have to be, no, because they wouldn't have the construction
They'd have to meet the
components. They'd
requirements.
have to meet the construction requirements, and they have to meet
Well,
the
they don't
parking
let the
requirements.
construction department know that they're having illegal. Okay. The hospital zone, whatever you call it. Do you know, does that include the 3 professional buildings? 5 Franklin, 36 North, and 50 North Avenue?
I think it's the,
No.
no. What did you say?
North Avenue is down below.
Okay,
Where
the
pool
hospital
is.
here, so he's not,
You see North Avenue running across?
yes. North Avenue is here.
Right.
Okay, so he's
There's
talking
a
about these
professional building
buildings?
right there.
They're right there.
They're right
Up
there.
there, so it does.
What about the apartment buildings that the hospital owns?
think
Which
they're
is
in that district.
behind the hospital, there's, I
I
don't know,
think they're
3
within
of
that
them?
district.
It goes to Rocco.
I think so.
The zone goes all the way to Rocco
Yeah.
Street.
The zone? Okay. Now, just getting back to your VB1 and VB2. All right, part of the VB1 is the immediate access to this commercial corridor, meaning Washington Avenue, correct? Okay. The proposed warehouse on the Kidde property, you have split between VB1 and VB2. It would not be permitted in the VB1 zone, correct?
It would not, but it's already an
from the
application.
railroad
not.
down.
And, yeah, so they're fine.
Yes, it would not be permitted?
It wouldn't be permitted, but it would be fine. The application's already in, Frank.
No, forget it. I mean, if the application weren't in, it would
If it weren't
then
in,
not be
they'd
permitted?
have to divide the use up.
Okay,
but it would still be business use.
Yeah, okay. That's it, thank you.
Anybody else in the public?
You talked already, Joe.
Well, I talked to the whole thing. The thing is this, I have a question, because this has come up before the council, before this board. Why aren't the schools listed as public open space on your map?
Why aren't the schools listed as public open space?
Because they all have, most of them have playgrounds. And we
No.
have a low amount of open space in the town, and this would just add to it, to make it more. Because we're being told, like, next to Nutley, we don't have half the open space Nutley does.
Yeah, because it's not public, it's
Yeah,
not
it's not
public property. It's
That's
not.
public.
Nobody can, you can't go in the schoolyard and school.
No, it's not.
You mean the municipal stadium? Yeah.
Well, the municipal stadium included, it's not listed on here. The high school and the municipal stadium is listed as a two-family zone. That's ridiculous. Why should it be listed as housing zones, is what I'm saying. There's schools, there's school playgrounds, there's the high school, there's the tennis courts, there's the ball fields over there where the stadium is, and it's all listed as two-family. Should be open space.
You have to get a permit to use the stadium.
I've never had to get a permit to go on one of the ball fields, never.
To use it.
Oh, yeah, to use it, when I was there with my kid.
It's an autonomous body, so that's not, it's not considered public.
It's an autonomous body, so it's not considered
But
public.
at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't go in a.
No, I'm not talking about when school's in session, don't get me
So
wrong.
it's not considered.
On the weekends, whenever there's not a game being played, you know, you can go after school for practice with your kid. I've never seen it, if it's not being used, it's not like it's locked up, you can't get in there, you break it in. They're all open.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be allowed to use it without permission. It's not a park. Park is a public open space.
I know, like number 9 school, they need permits. The rec takes permits out to have their practices there.
Well,
It isn't just open to anybody, just.
No,
go
no,
there.
I understand that.
You
I
can't
understand
play
you
in the
need
county
permits in order.
parks, you can't play in the county parks without permits either.
Yeah, but it's all open.
But you still need a
Just because
permit.
it's
You need a permit to reserve it,
Yeah.
let's put it that way. To reserve it, you need a permit. But that doesn't mean people don't use the parks, they all use the parks.
Yeah, but it's a
I'm just saying to add to the open space, and it shouldn't be listed as housing. It's a two-family zone. Listed as something else, but not housing.
That's the zone it's in.
Yeah, it's the zone it's in.
And isn't there wording
that
that the
is a change.
schools
We haven't.
supersede-
Actually, it's not in the zone, that zone is the whole thing. The whole high school with the stadium, it's all one zone.
One of the things for what you're looking for, to identify open space and recreation space and totals, that's really for an open space recreation plan or a component of the master plan element, but not really a zoning map. I mean, the zoning map is for development
Can
standards.
I ask you a question? Can the zoning map be made that this is public school property or town property?
I think Mr. Sheldon had brought that up on, didn't you want to, Mr. Sheldon had brought it up that he wanted all the schools in a special school district.
Yeah,
And I thought one of the
brought
players
that-
didn't think it was a good idea.
they're exempt, so you can call it whatever you want, they're exempt.
Yeah, that was brought up before.
Okay, another thing. On this schedule of district regulations, now I noticed the RA1 is not listed and the RA2 is not listed.
Because there's no change to that.
So what you're saying is, you can have a 50 by 100 foot lot or 40 by 100 foot lot for a one family, but only a 35 by 100 foot lot for a two family in the town? Because that's what's on this regulation here.
Which section are you looking at?
I'm looking at this here, right here, this nice
Yeah,
table.
it's
That's nice
in the
table.
two-family district, if you have a small one, you still have to meet the parking requirements. So if you only have 2 spaces, you're gonna get a 1 over a 1. You're not gonna get one.
I'm just saying, the size of the lot is 35 by 100, and yet for one family, it's 40 by 100 and 50 by 100. To me, it's asinine. To make a house that's a double house compared to the other ones, less of a lot that's needed than a one family. The minimum one family is 40 by 100. And yet here, the minimum for a two family, now I'm being told you can put a 3 family in the district, is 35 by 100. Also, I want to mention, on all the dwelling units per acre, there's no density here anywhere. There's not one density listed. Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
Why is there no density?
The bulk standards dictate the density.
What do you mean the bulk standards dictate the density?
Heights,
It's-
parking
it's a-
spaces.
It's a form-based approach, so the whole idea is for the form of the building to be the dominant, to dictate what is gonna, and what, the only thing that you can do there is meet the requirements for parking. The parking will dictate it, and the building size will dictate it. And you can only do the number of units that fit within that.
All right, now let's go to the SLR, which is the Silver Lake Residential. You have nothing listed for the area, nothing listed for the width, and nothing listed for the depth.
And I think in discussions that came out of this evening's discussions, the area would be 2,500, the width would be 25, the depth would be 100, and the side yard would be 2 feet and 3 feet.
2 feet and 3 feet. Now, there was, also the zero's gonna go away.
Yes.
Okay. Now, also, let's go down to the BG and the BA. Those, no area listed there, no width, no depth, no maximum building coverage.
The reason for the area not being listed in the BG and the BA is because they do vary a lot. Along the avenue, they vary a lot. And the whole idea is to make sure that you're not gonna, just the lot size alone isn't gonna be a factor that ditches a project. Basically, if they have a smaller lot, if they build the type of building that's permitted and put in the uses that are permitted, then they can go forward with the development of that lot. Otherwise, all we're doing is stalling investment or stalling businesses or stalling people from moving forward just based on an arbitrary size. In a residential district neighborhood, it's different because there's a character that's set, but in a business, on a business corridor, it's a little different.
But isn't a BA a mixed-use business district? There's residences on top of the businesses?
Just like the BG.
Right, and if that's taking place, I'll give you an example. The front could be a 0, rear has to be 15, but the sides is 0 or 10.
Yeah.
Again, we got the 0 thing.
Yeah, well, that's a business.
That's a business, that's
Yeah,
the corner
Washington
store.
Avenue, Franklin Street, it makes
That's
sense.
the corner
You got
store.
stores next to each other, you don't want space.
Even
I'm not arguing over the stores, I'm talking about the residences above.
What about?
Well, because you're gonna have to have windows on the side, I mean, where are you gonna have the windows?
Front and back.
Yeah, front and back.
Big buildings.
Sometimes on the corner on the side, if you could do.
So anything that doesn't comply with this would have to come before the zoning board.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying? Okay, all right. And there's still no maximum building coverage. There's no minimum open space on VB1 and VB2. See, I don't like it when there's blanks, because that means anything can happen. That's why I'm mentioning this. One other thing I want to mention, there is a mention in this about anyone who has a house where the driveway goes down, which I think is the stupidest thing in the world, to be honest with you. Because you're asking for your garage to get flooded, you're begging it. And it says you can close it up, and I agree with that, you can close it up, but the part in here that said that it would be used as a basement and not as another unit was pulled out. This is encouraging basement apartments.
It's still illegal, right, Mr. Di Lorenzo?
Yes.
Basement apartment would be legal there?
No.
Illegal.
It's still
Illegal.
illegal.
Okay, because I'm saying, why was that part taken out, that it can't be used as another? I think that should be kept in, that it can't be used as a second unit.
Well, it would have to, there's another section that talks about any additional units would have to be in conformance with the construction code, where you need, I forget what you call it, the escape window, and you need other things. There's a lot of requirements.
Oh, I know, because we've had those cases come before.
This wouldn't, yeah, this is almost extra language, where really what matters is it complies with the construction code. If they want it or not.
Well, I don't know, I would want Frankie's opinion on this, because it says.
Well, yeah, they'd have to meet the requirements of the building and fire code. That's what she's getting at.
So once you close the basement, let's say it's a one-family house and you close the basement. Now, they're saying you can't, it's currently saying you can't use it as a second unit. And you're taking that out of the ordinance. That's why I'm wondering, why should that be allowed to be taken out of the ordinance?
Because this is in a section that's talking about parking, and it really doesn't belong even in here. I mean, it just.
Well, it's in there and it's crossed out. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Because there's other sections that talk about basement and other places in a unit where, and it specifically references the building code. And it does it in straightforward. This is sort of like, this is like a piece of an idea in the wrong place, that's all.
Oh, it's in the wrong place.
I think it's the wrong place. I mean, it's in
Any
the
other-
parking section.
Anybody else?
One more quick question, based on what you said. When Jerry was talking about the BG zone and they're saying there were no dimensions listed, and you're saying it depends on the use, who would make the decision whether it's good or not? Frankie?
Yeah.
Tom Harris? Okay.
Frank, would it have to come before a board, or is it the construction code?
That's what I'm
is
saying,
being
it has to come before a board.
Depending if it doesn't mean anything, we have to send it to
Doesn't
the
mean
board,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else in the public? If nobody else in the public has a question or comment, we'll close the public portion at this time. And I guess to move this forward, we had a couple of our major concerns. Do you want to, we like make notes on it and take it back to the council? And I think that would be a wise thing to do, come back with the recommendations that we have. It was, you had a, Rose, or it was the 2 and a 3 foot setback?
I have them written, I mean, I can read them to the record, and we
Yeah, I want to read it into the record.
We can make the adjustment, and then that could be.
And let me, can I just, for the record, whatever we do here, in the final draft, we recommend it or don't recommend it, the council has the final say.
Absolutely.
So if we say we don't like this at all, it's still up to the council to say, we want these ordinances, we're gonna vote on it.
Or you can take this and amend it, you can make an adjustment to it and recommend the adjusted ordinance to the council.
That's what I think.
Okay.
Are we all in agreement? I think that's what we're gonna make some adjustments,
That's what we.
send it back to the council.
Yeah, they won't be able to vote on it probably till July, because everything dies on the 1st, you know, can't carry it over, so.
That's true.
So you wanna read it into the record, that'd be helpful.
Okay, so for the Silver Lake Residential District, the minimum lot area would be 2,500 feet, the width would be 25 feet, the depth 100 feet, and the side yards, a minimum of 2 on one side and 3 on the other.
So it only could be two
And that would be a two-family, and there would be a two-family, that would be a maximum of a two-family on a 25-foot wide lot. And then there were 2 other sections that was changed, 23-18.27, item 10, the last sentence that says sidewalk concrete must be tinted Schofield charcoal or equivalent. White concrete is prohibited, that would be struck.
Can you repeat that? We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, it's talking about sidewalk concrete. Sidewalk concrete must be tinted Schofield charcoal or the equivalent. White concrete is prohibited. That was an idea that was not supported by the planning board, and it was supposed to be deleted, it was not. So I'm looking to delete it from the text.
So you can do white concrete?
Yes.
Is that it? What about the no parking requirement for a 3-story townhome, a 3-family townhome?
The townhome would not be the 20-foot.
We're taking the 20-foot out, so that
Taking that
no
out.
parking only applies to 20-foot. So that's it,
Okay,
right?
taking it.
You meant the family, not the townhomes. You meant the 3-family house, not a townhome house.
Well,
What do you mean?
when it said here, a
parking
3-family townhome could have no parking required.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
I
so,
got it.
yeah, we can take that
I
out.
got it.
So it's like not waived, so it wouldn't be a
Correct,
waiver.
I got it.
Is everybody in agreement with those
I
recommendations?
thought you were talking about a different district.
No. Well, if we're all in agreement and we got it all on the record, does someone want to make a motion to send this back to the council with our recommendations?
Motion.
Second.
Call the roll?
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Zangari.
Yes.
Mr. Conti.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Gold.
Mr. Corvo?
Yes.
Mr. Graziano?
Yes.
Ms. Swan?
Yes.
Ms. Novarato?
Yes.
Thank you. Someone like to make a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.